My name is MysterE. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be going through the aftermath of the U.S. election. Like, wow, what a lead up. Like, you really couldn't get away from it at all. Like, oh my God. Especially in the last couple of weeks. Like, everything is about the U.S. election non-stop. And so it feels nice for us to be kind of at this point where it's over. It's over. We, as a global population, made it through the U.S. election. Like, it really does feel like that, like, honestly. Like, I know Americans might not feel like that, but, it definitely feels like that for the rest of us. We all lived through the election just as much as you do. So, like, let's just go through the aftermath together. That's what I was thinking, in terms of, like, what happened, like, kind of what we can, I don't know, what we can learn from the sentiment that is now coming out, following, Trump's victory, which was like, it seems like it was not predicted. Like I just want to touch on that first. I think we should. Like, it really seems like people didn't see that one coming. And like the people I spoke to, for instance, really didn't see one, like, I think out of like just their own kind of personal desires, they didn't want to see, like, they didn't want to see Trump in again. So they were just kind of like, oh, he's not going to make it. It's never going to happen. He's not going to get reelected. Or he's not going to be put back in the White House again after a break. And then there were other people that were just like, no, the American political establishment just won't let that happen. The machine has had, 8 years, let's say, to kind of prepare for a second Trump term. And they're not going to let that one pass the keeper. And here we are. So it just feels like a lot of the people kind of in the circles I was, appearing in, were kind of blindsided by this whole Trump victory. So I don't know, like, maybe you can tell me how you saw it in the chat. I don't know why my chat's not coming up here. Oh, I can see it now. Yeah. Maybe give me your thoughts on who you thought was going to win. Like, I'm going to go through some varying opinions today. And, like, you know what? Because we are a revolutionary channel and we speak about kind of communism and all that sort of stuff, let's see, actually, if we can get an opinion on that front. Let's just watch it together for a little bit and see what we get. So I'm going to go over to, let's have a look here. Let's see if I can, let me see if I can get that up. There we go. So this is the Revolutionary Communist Party in the UK. And so, like, I think they're going to kind of analyze kind of the Trump victory and stuff like that. So let's see what, like, they have to say and see if there's any value in this Revolutionary Communist Party kind of breakdown of what everything means. They're trying to make sense of it, I guess. So this happened about 7 hours ago, so it's pretty fresh. Let's see what they have to say, kind of thing, about, like, Trump. And then we'll kind of chop and change between different kind of opinions and like, we can talk in the chat if you want to give me your 2 cents about what all of this means. Let's have a go.
We're here back for Communist Radio.
We are back.
We are back, and it is the morning on which, literally actually just a couple of minutes before we start recording this, the election in the US has now been called for Donald Trump.
Yep.
Major events.
Yes.
And
well, they don't look happy.
Everyone's talking about it in the office at the moment. There's lots of conversations going on.
They don't look happy
all
at
around
all.
us. We thought we would just get in front of the microphones and give our initial thoughts. What is your initial thought?
This election, all I can think is what a damning indictment on the Democrats. And I think people, I said that last night I was at the U.S. Embassy to protest. I should clarify.
There's an encampment outside.
There's an encampment outside it, and we had a protest outside. And yeah, this is what I was talking about. I said this in a speech. You know, the whole world is looking at America thinking, what on earth is happening there? Trump is this insane man, and yet the Democrats are totally incapable of defeating him.
The entire U.S. establishment is completely incapable.
The entire US, yeah, that's it. And what a damning indictment. And I think that it just speaks to the like rottenness.
See, this is what I was talking about before. Like, there's this real sentiment out there, even among communists, apparently, that, like, you know, the political establishment was just never going to let this happen. They were never going to let Trump kind of back in. And I just don't know about that. Like, yeah, like, I wasn't getting that vibe. I really saw from what I was looking at that, like, this was absolute neck and neck, and you just couldn't split this, even if you tried. Like, there was no chance that you were going to be able to just say with any certainty that you were going to have definitely one person coming away with this as the victor. So, but they look angry. They don't look. They're definitely not happy about it. But like, they also seem, while like, you know, to be damning the Democratic Party and being like, ha ha, you got it wrong, or like, you couldn't win, like, kind of thing. They're also just like, well, why couldn't you do anything about Trump? It's a very, very contradictory and very conflicting emotion that's going on for communists, I guess. So you got to feel for them, and you got to feel for the world. Like I was saying at the start, like, the Americans aren't the only people affected by this. I'm going to try and find a really funny, like, Futurama joke about this. Let's see if I can do that while they're speaking.
Really, of the American establishment right now and its complete inability to understand what is happening. The reason the Democrats, and Kamala Harris in particular, have lost is because they do not understand why people support Trump. And so they ran
That's true.
a similar election campaign. They basically just tried to do what Hillary Clinton did in 2016. And even though it didn't work then, shockingly, it hasn't worked again.
So why do people support Trump?
People support Trump because, in a tragic way, he comes across as the anti-establishment candidate. This is what the Democrats don't understand. Whilst Trump was there in a distorted demagogic manner, speaking actually to the working class in America, what was Kamala Harris doing?
Yeah.
She was hanging out with Beyonce.
Ha!
She was getting billionaire endorsements.
I saw that a strategist for the Democratic Party was quoted as saying, in the aftermath of this defeat, we need to stop being the party of Hollywood, and we need to talk to ordinary people.
Yeah.
And that is the point. Trump has spoken to the working class. He
Yeah.
speaks to the working class.
Yeah.
He speaks on reactionary issues, but he speaks to the working class.
Yeah.
And he talks about the economy. He talks about the things that actually matter to them.
Yeah.
And I think that is why he won.
And as you say, he does it in a reactionary manner. He blames immigrants for the cost of living crisis. But he's saying, I know your life is getting harder. Meanwhile, Beyonce's getting Taylor Swift and Leonardo DiCaprio, and as you say, Hollywood, billionaires literally, to come out and say, oh, you've got to support Kamala Harris because isn't it time that we had a woman in charge? And it totally misunderstands, misreads, and doesn't answer fundamentally the problems in people's lives. We have to explain that Trump's answer is a total lie as well. He isn't actually an anti-establishment candidate. He's got Elon Musk on his side, and he's got plenty of billionaires actually on his side as well. But this election result is just a damning indictment on the Democrats, but also just the whole of the American establishment. They have created Trump and Trumpism over years and years and years.
It's not a bad analysis, actually. Hey, I'm supportive of what they're generally saying, in the sense that, like, you know, Trump speaks to the working class person, and, like, you know, if you want to look at this from a communist and revolutionary perspective, and obviously a Marxist perspective, they're this type of communist, then, you know, the appealing to the working class is, like, you know, kind of the the basic element in modern politics, which will be a revolutionary driving force, or at least a very important political driving force for any type of movement. There is obviously a mass of working people out there, and whoever can convince them to use their political power in a way that is necessary to any ends is going to do well. Now that might seem really logical for us. Okay, oh yeah, if you get a mass group of people behind your vote, then you're going to have some type of political power. That's like a no-brainer. But like, that is some revolutionary stuff in and of itself. Like that didn't happen for a long time. Even when democracy first started, right? And like when democracy first started, let's just call it representative government for now. When that first happened, that was bourgeois politics. Okay, so it was the wealthy and the rich in various societies, Western societies, let's call it, and they were, looking for a political system that suited their interests. And so in order to be able to partake in that political system, you had to basically have property, or let's say be involved in the economy somehow. So like maybe you didn't have property, but you were like earning enough of a living to pay taxes. And so if you were taxed on certain things, if you were earning a certain amount of money, if you had property, you were, I guess, the bourgeois. You were part of that upper echelon of society that was involved in economic matters. And so, therefore, you were franchised, i.e. you were able to vote. You were able to participate in that system and have, I guess, if not your voice heard specifically, you were able to kind of, just partake in that system. And so here's where it gets truly incredible. Okay, as we progress through the Industrial Revolution and like working people became politically agitated, so not politically involved exactly, but politically agitated, all right, they started to ask for certain rights. Like it was all economic based at the start. And like, they were looking for, better working conditions and better, like basically basic human rights. And then from there, they started to ask for the vote. They wanted to make sure that they were involved in the political process. And like I said, like prior to that, it was just people that were already established. So if you had an aristocracy in your society, they were the house. They controlled parliament through, basically being a bunch of lords. And then you had kind of the bourgeois that kind of, were the other section in that political establishment that looked after themselves. But they were always very wary about letting the, uneducated masses, the working masses into the political system. And this happened, in continental Europe, and it happened in, the Americas as well, or North America, specifically in the colonies. They spent a lot of time, the founding fathers, speaking about what the hell you do with the mass of the population. Do you give them voting power? Because like the assumption was just this. And like we just have completely forgotten this today, or we don't realize it. Like all they were scared about, these bourgeois, this bourgeois class and these bourgeois politicians, all they were scared about was that like if you give the majority of people a vote, so working people a vote, they will get together, form one big group, and take all of the money and all of the wealth off the people that control the economy. And like that never happened. But going back to what I was talking about before, like the political power that's in the masses is the thing that shapes everything today. We just don't understand that. We think it's, like she was saying, it's like the political establishment haven't done their job, and like, the Democrats have failed to read the situation properly and all that sort of stuff. What a more accurate way of saying that, well, this person, while they are right in saying that, like a more accurate way of saying it is like they failed to mobilize the great masses of everyone out there in the right way to serve their own needs. And like we as the great masses have never been able to, organize ourselves properly in one large party to actually take stuff for ourselves, because that's how this system is designed, representative government. It is designed so interest groups get in and have access to kind of how the society will be governed, like who gets what resources and who gets what attention, and they just make sure that everything's done in their interests. Now, like, you know, as the largest group, you'd think that, like, which is what they feared, right? As the largest group, you think we'd all, you know, get together, hold hands, cooperate with one another to actually get those things for ourselves. So, you know, summary of my little rant here is that, yes, all of the political power actually stands with the masses. And Marx knew this, and that's why he thought like this was a very revolutionary time in history, especially in his time, but like it still carries over to now, is that for the first time, a group which is traditionally, right, the exploited class, the working class, the people that, you know, use their labor power and trade that off somehow. So in this case, in our time, we trade it off for a wage, but like we also understand and have access to politics. Slaves, the traditional working class in the ancient mode of production, no political involvement. Serfs in the feudal mode of production, no political involvement. Absolutely not. No way were they going to have representation. Today, working people have fought, and not only are they politically minded, like people care generally about politics, but like not only are they like politically minded, but they are politically active, and that's a revolutionary force in itself, and a force to be reckoned with. Let's be honest.
Of actually attacking the working class.
Yeah, that's it. And the point is that now this opens up a really unstable situation within the United States, because there's this big anti-establishment movement that has been generated, and it's feeling very emboldened now, but also on a world scale, because the US is the most powerful imperialist nation, and its actions, what goes on inside the US, is obviously going to have an impact. Now, there's a lot more that could be said, I think, about the United States, what's going on there, the election, everything else. I'm pretty certain that our international comrades, that our US comrades will be putting all kinds of stuff out about that.
Yeah.
We'll leave that to them.
Yeah.
Because this has literally just happened anyway. There's a limited amount we can go into all of the analysis. But what we can say something about, and what we can have a bit of a think about now, is what is the impact of a second Trump presidency on the UK?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the first thing is that this is going to be a bit difficult for Starmer, to say the least.
To say the least. I mean, Starmer, we were talking earlier about polls in Britain, that in terms of like who people support in America. And did you say 18%?
80, that's the number that I saw, 18%.
Only 18% of people in Britain wanted to like support Trump, basically, or would have, you know, preferred a Trump victory. And so now Starmer has already congratulated him and will presumably, you know, have to fly over soon and have a meeting or whatever it is. And this is going to enrage people.
Yeah. Do you remember how
I don't
enraged
know
people
about
were
that.
when Theresa May went over to the White House and was photographed holding Donald Trump's hand
Yeah.
as they walked out for a press call?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's pretty typical. Like, you know, it's not unusual for world leaders to all pat each other on the back, especially as they all like have been stabbing each other in the back. Like apparently, a number of Australian leaders have been, you know, given kind of, I don't know, have been under attack because like they have been, you know, going after Trump, like attacking him on their social media accounts and stuff like that. And like now they're quickly and frantically like deleting bad Trump tweets about Trump and all this sort of stuff. So like it's not unusual for world leaders to go around and start kissing the ring of the American president as soon as I guess the U.S. election is finished. Not unusual at all. Let's see if I can find that actually. Rudd and Trump tweets. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Trump's victory means old tweets and statements are coming back to haunt Albanese. So for those international viewers, Albanese is our prime minister. So he's been under attack apparently because he's said some things, I don't know, about Trump. And Rudd, who is a former prime minister and now is a US ambassador, has said some pretty damning things about Trump actually. Like basically blaming him for all of the problems of the West. And he's been frantically apparently going through and like taking down old tweets and things attacking Trump. But like I don't know what these two are getting at here. Let's
So funny.
continue.
And that would be the same thing when Starmer's over there
Holding his hand. Yeah, exactly.
And David,
Yeah, I don't know if people were going to be so upset. Like, look at all the stuff that happened in Britain in April, I think it was, this year, where they had all of those riots. Like, they were race-fueled riots about, like, right-wing issues. People were angry kind of about, like, immigration, misdirected, obviously, but like the sentiment is there. Like these two started off by talking about like you have to be able to capture the zeitgeist. You have to be able to understand what people are concerned about. And if like the media have been telling them for years, decades, that migrants are the enemy, and like they are convinced of that, then there's going to be like race riots and stuff. And Trump represents all of that. Like he does represent like this anti-immigration sentiment. So like I'd be very surprised. Oh, here we go. I've got something in the chat. The global actions are an important part. Australia found itself knee deep in Chinese issues last time he was around. The proverbial hat is a must. Yep. There were Trump rallies in England on election day. Very big turnouts too. See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm surprised that they're just taking this view, these two, that like, he's got some state that only 18% of people are pro-Trump. So then like English people are going to be unhappy if their prime minister goes over and kisses the ring. I don't know about that. I don't know about that at all. Like if anything, the record stands in terms of like looking at like material conditions. We're looking at concrete reality here. Is that people in Britain are quite upset about some of the issues that Trump represents. And so, like, I don't know if they're going to be too upset about this. It's a very good point, Jerry Poppins, and you articulated it much better than I was trying to, but I was trying.
Lammy's already given his congratulations.
David Lammy, what is there to say? I mean, he's a disgrace.
That's a good point. Yeah, like, look at Brexit. Like, that was an overwhelming kind of statement that the UK made about how they envisage themselves in terms of integrating with a globalized world and a very multicultural, hand-holding kind of world. Like it was basically a backlash against that sentiment. Like obviously they had no actual thought about like the mechanics of that and what implications that was going to have on their economy. But like, it doesn't matter. People get passionate about stuff and they do some pretty irrational or rash things. Let's not call it irrational. It just depends on what side of the fence you sit on, really. Yeah, Brexit's a good example. Thank you again, Mary Poppins.
David Lammy in 2016, I think it was 2016, said that Trump was a neo-Nazi KKK sympathizer. A sociopath. And today he said, congratulations, Donald Trump, and I'm looking forward to like, and like it's bonkers and it's bizarre, but as you say,
it's bonkers.
All this is going to do is make people even angrier.
Love the accent.
At Starmer and at Lammy, and really further entrench this idea that there's no. You're all the same. You're all the same. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's won. And it also is going to complicate.
But that's bourgeois politics right there. Like I was saying, they all just kiss each other's rings. Let's just call it. And like this is just the merry-go-round. Like they tweet an outrageous thing one day and then they're like shaking hands at an event the other day, like the next day kind of thing. It's just, this is bourgeois politics. And this is why we find it so repulsive. Like this system, and this is why we are revolutionaries through and through. But it is the system that we've got, and we have to be like, aware of the contradictions in the system, as opposed to being confused by them. Like this happened every 4 years. Like, come on, like this is not unusual stuff here by any means. There is something else that I wanted to have a look at. I'll jump back to these guys. I will, I swear. But like, I wanted to go to see. Damn it! Why is it doing that? Damn. I want to go have a look at Biden. What Biden says. Hello, Biden. Biden. Let's see what comes up first. National address of Biden. Because I thought this was interesting. Yeah, here we go. This is the one I was watching before.
Finish versus the pre-rinse.
The ads are loud. Sorry, don't look. You're not allowed to look at other people's advertising. Pretty sure that's a thing. Look away. Avert your eyes.
It's going to take time.
Yeah, here we go.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Thank you. Please. Thank you.
So this is like 7 hours ago. It's still pretty fresh. Like, I was asleep. Maybe the other people watching this were actually around for this. Get premium, you dog. This is your job. I don't know. Can I swear on this? I'm just gonna. I'll keep it low key, but get stuffed, Jerry Poppins. Once you start, if you come over to my Patreon and pay for my premium YouTube, I'll get it. I'll get it, Mary Poppins.
Good to see this cabinet and staff together here. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please.
He looks relieved, doesn't he? No, you reckon? He does look relieved. Like, even Kamala looked relieved. She actually looked the happiest I've ever seen her when she gave her speech where she conceded to Donald Trump. She just looked more relaxed. She's been on edge for months. She just hasn't handled the whole thing very well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's good to see you all. Particularly good to see my granddaughter sitting in the front row here. Hi, Finn. How are you, honey? For over 200 years, America has carried on the greatest experiment in self-government in the history of the world. And that's not hyperbole, that's a fact. We're the people. The people vote and choose their own leaders, and they do it peacefully. And we're in a democracy. The will of the people always prevails. Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory. And I assured him that I would direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. That's what the American people deserve. Yesterday, I also spoke with Vice President Harris. She's been a partner and a public servant. She ran an inspiring campaign, and everyone got to see something that I learned early on to respect so much, her character. She has a backbone like a ramrod. She has great character, true character.
Backbone like a ramrod. I love the imagery there. That's great. Well, I'm sure she does. I know that when she was a DA, she put a lot of people behind bars for very, very petty things. And like, I think she blocked someone from like a ramrod. That's right. Thank you very much, Poppins. Yeah, like, I think she like stopped a few things happening on death row that were questionable. So like, yes, she definitely has a strong will.
Character. She gave her whole heart and effort, and she and her entire team should be proud of the campaign they ran. You know, the struggle for the soul of America, since our very founding, has always been an ongoing debate and still vital today. I know for some people, it's a time for victory.
You know what's really like interesting looking at like American politics from the outside is kind of this way that this idea of, I don't know, the American spirit, like he called it the American soul or the soul of this nation. This is like this concept in philosophy, I'm pretty sure, which is around this idea called reification. And so like they basically make kind of these things, these social relations, these kind of conceptual notions into like real things. And like it's a big part of the American political rhetoric, like, you know, the heart of the American people, the soul of this nation, which comes down to, you know, which basically provides us with this democratic freedom. So like these things that are just, you know, amorphous concepts, intangible things, are turned into like real, actual relationships. It's very, very interesting how Americans see themselves in this light, like they have a unified national spirit of some sort, and their politicians talk to it like it's this real thing. And like I feel like other kind of Western nations, let's say, don't have this kind of air about them, that like there is a spirit that lives through the heart of America and like runs through from the East Coast to the West, and kind of is this entity to itself, and which politicians tap into and express on behalf of the people. It's a very, very interesting concept, and it leads to very emotional politics and governing, which is like, you know, it's pretty bipolar and pretty scary for a nation that is effectively, you know, the leader of the free world, and like, you know, the hegemonic power in the global system at the moment. Let's not deny that. So like when they work with this kind of sensationalized passion, like it can be problematic for the rest of the world, because it makes them rather unstable. And like you can see a lot of their political rhetoric is all about this idea. Like he's going to start touching on that right now, about like, you know, how we're going to have a peaceful transition and all this sort of stuff. And like this is a concept that is, you know, very strange to like other countries. It's just like, okay, someone gets elected and it's just like change of government, whatever. But like now it's all just like, look, we're going to be upstanding and make sure that this transition happens okay. And it's just like, well, yeah, any civilized person would do that. Any civilized nation would just make sure that the transition to the new administration is fine. But like they're making a big deal of this, like this is now an unusual event. And I know, I get it. It's because this is what happened under Trump, but like there wasn't a peaceful transition, but they're making a big deal about it. Like, again, it's fundamental to the national spirit.
To state the obvious. For others, it's a time of loss. Campaigns are contests of competing visions. The country chooses one or the other. We accept the choice the country made. I've said many times, you can't love your country only when you win. You can't love your neighbor only when you agree. Something I hope we can do, no matter who you voted for, is see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans. Bring down the temperature. I also hope we can lay to rest the question about the integrity of the American electoral system. It is honest, it is fair, and it is transparent. And it can be trusted, win or lose.
It's a big problem they've got over there
I also
now.
hope we can restore the respect for all our election
You know,
workers who busted their
it's
necks,
weird
took
for a foreigner as well. Like in Australia, we have the Australian Electoral Commission. So like a federal election is looked after by one body. But in America, like all of the electoral kind of like the voting, the way it's organized, the whole system is done state by state. And so like much room for people to, like, let's not even say that, like, you know, much room for things to go wrong. Let's just say much room for people to debate, hey, over in this state they didn't count properly, and like they can speculate on like things not being transparent or things not being legitimate and stuff like that in terms of vote counting. And then like people can have all of these suspicions about, like, you know, it was an unfair election and all this sort of stuff, which is a really big issue by the sounds of it in in the modern times for Americans. And again, I understand the irony being that it was Trump that started all of this stuff, but for whatever reason, it is now a pressing matter for the Americans, and that I'm raising it because that sort of sentiment trickles down to the rest of the world, obviously, and people are just going to be looking at that playbook all over the world and calling things out based on what's happened in America. Oh, it was a fair election. So the more attention they give to this kind of stuff, the more it becomes a monster in and of itself.
First, at the outset, we should thank them. Thank them for staffing voting sites, counting the votes, protecting the very integrity of the election. Many of them are volunteers who do it simply out of love for their country.
See, this is that reification that I was talking about. People volunteer for stuff all the time, and they volunteer to get involved for vote counting. Some people just like vote counting, and politics and stuff like that. And it's just they do it for their nation. Who gets up in the morning and is I'm going to be a volunteer voter because I love America so much. They're just look, they want to be part of the process. There could be other reasons, but it's always about it's because they're just great Americans. That's the most important thing. Being a good American. Oh no. I think it's showing up on the wrong thing. It's unfortunate. Can you see anyone in the chat? Can you see the Biden speech, or can you only see the commies going at it? Anyone? Anyway, I'm just gonna keep assuming that this is working properly, because my YouTube studio is showing me something different. I hope this is working alright. Boo YouTube studio. It's paused. Okay. No, that's good. So you can see Biden at least. That's the main thing. Yeah, there we go. Okay, my YouTube studio is playing up. Fair enough.
As they did their duty as citizens.
Thank you, Jerry Poppins. Yeah, it's a good question. Good question. What do they like about him? Well, they proved, we were talking about earlier, they proved that they very much aligned with Trump's ideals earlier this year when they were all protesting about that incident that happened with someone who turned out not to be a migrant anyway. But they were very upset about what was happening with migration policies and immigrant communities.
I will do my duty as president. I'll fulfill my oath, and I will honor the Constitution. On January 20th, we'll have a peaceful transfer of power here in America. To all our incredible staff, supporters, cabinet members, all the people who've been hanging out with me for the last 4 years, God love you, as my mother would say.
God love you.
Thank you so much. You put so much into
God
the past 4 years. I know it's a difficult time. You're hurting. I hear you and I see you. But don't forget all that we accomplished. It's been a historic presidency. Not because I'm president, because what we've done, what you've done. A presidency for all Americans. Much of the work we've done is already being felt by the American people, but the vast majority of it will not be felt over the next 10 years. We have legislation we passed that's just only now just really kicking in. We're going to see over $1 trillion worth of infrastructure work done, changing people's lives in rural communities and communities that are in real difficulty.
He does struggle a little bit, but that was generally quite articulate for the last 5 minutes anyway. Okay, this is a really good question in the chat. So do I think there is a right-wing radicalization occurring to the youth of the English-speaking world? I'm a young man, and all the popular culture I consume seems to be dominated by a zeitgeist of a particular nature. I would say that zeitgeist is, yeah. And look, I spoke about this on the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast recently with 4IS, and I've started kind of viewing all of this kind of right wing shorts, basically, not the long form content. I couldn't really bring myself to doing that yet, but like shorts from like right wing or conservative American, like kind of political voices, I guess. Charlie Kirk, etc. and co. If you know those people, and you know, unfortunately, Ben Shapiro's, like Dave Rubin's, people like that, and like they are very able and articulate when it comes to reaching or discussing what I would say are kind of working class issues. Like they are able to pick upon like this sentiment out there that people are upset with stuff. Now they direct that rage or like people's disappointment towards issues that align with their agenda. So like, you know, they want to close the borders or something like that. And so like they say, see, migrants are the reason why you're so upset and you're angry with the world right now. So let's blame migrants. Or like, you know, like, you know, there was a big discussion in the American election about, you know, basically bodily autonomy and like versus being pro-life. So the debate over whether we should legalize or they should legalize abortion or not. And so like that really came down to like there was this feeling out there, I guess, among young men that like they are being cut out of the conversation and like they don't have any say in kind of making decisions over human life. And so like there is this, they picked up on this sentiment there and they were like, yeah, you know, why should men be cut out of that decision making process, and like why should women be given that executive power and have these kind of rights to destroy kind of small humans, let's say. And so they pick up on sentiment very well and then redirect it at whatever they think is an agenda item for them. How do we counter this changing political landscape? Like, it seems to be a lot of young men are misinformed about the issues they seem to be passionate about. And this is what I'm saying. Like, there are right-wing people or commentators or influencers, whatever they are, like even, you know, like people like Andrew Tate, they're able to basically capture this kind of sentiment very, very effectively. And like, how do we do that? They're able to dismantle talking points that the regular guy can't in the moment. Yeah, like they're all about like owning the libs and stuff like that. It's kind of like social revenge porn. A lot of young men in particular have been told they are at the bottom. Yeah, and a lot of like young white men feel like this sentiment, like the entire world's against them because of like, you know, I don't know, cancel culture and political correctness and all that sort of stuff. And so like when you start to cut out a segment of the population and make them feel inferior, especially where they used to have kind of a lot of, I guess you would say, power, there is a reaction. Like, you know, socialist analyses of the political spectrum is all about like revolutionary movement and reaction. So reactionary effects are huge. And so like, you know, how do we counter any of that sort of stuff? Well, like, first of all, I think you have to be cutting. Like, Jerry Poppins is right. It's like social revenge porn. Like, so a lot of these guys just get in there and they own someone that like, and they say something like really cutting really quickly that it's like someone really can't respond to in a fast way. They have to kind of think about it. And like, if you have to sit there and contemplate things, it looks like to an audience that you've owned this person. And so like, if you really effectively want to counter this sort of stuff, you have to engage in debates with these people. Like, honestly, like I've started watching all of this sort of stuff because like I sit there and I think to myself, damn, how would I respond to that? When Ben Shapiro speaks at like, you know, 50 miles an hour, you know, and spits out words that are also almost like incomprehensible, how would I respond to that on the fly? How would I respond to Charlie Kirk on the fly, kind of thing? And you need to be able to formulate those things in your mind and start to deliver this content for yourself. And someone is saying something that gives them their power back. Yeah, 100%. Honestly, it seems like semi-incels I'm a straight white male, and I have never been discriminated for being so. Yeah, it just seems like a dominant force upset that they are losing their dominance. Yeah, and like that's the thing though. They are upset because they believe they are losing their dominance. What I would say is, in fairness to them, that it's not that they are, being treated as second-class citizens. It's just like there is a leveling out in terms of like what happens in terms of who's the most dominant interest group, because that's what politics is all about. Is about which interest group gets the most attention, and like whoever gets the most attention gets the most funding and gets the most support on a national level, at a local level, at a federal, at a state level, what have you. And so like if they're one of many shouting voices now, they feel the burn of that a little bit. Before, which was really like everything, especially in a country like America, everything was directed at kind of white American interest groups, and so they always had representation and their voice being heard. But now they're getting lost in the mix a little bit, and it's upsetting them. And like these people, these right-wing kind of commentators and all that sort of stuff, they pick up on this sentiment to perfection. Sorry, they don't just pick up on it. Sorry, I think we could all pick up on the sentiment. Sorry, they weaponize that sentiment to perfection, and it's something that left-wing people don't do. It's something that like revolutionary content creators or whoever, like socialists, whatever you want to call them, people on the left side of the political spectrum, they don't pick up as effectively. Does this election result cause any worry for you or our Australian federal election? I don't know. It's a good question. Like, it means a lot for Australia strategically, like on a geopolitical standpoint. Like, I heard someone say to me, and I can't fact check this because I don't know where this source came from, but like someone said that if Trump got into power, that like he was going to cut his alliance with Australia. And I was like, I don't know about that, man. When like this person had said that to me, I was like, are you sure? Because like it would seem to me that in the world, the globalized, or the anti-globalized world that we're moving towards, where we're going from US basic hegemony over everything to potentially not a unipolar world anymore, like a multipolar world, or at least two massive powers like China and co versus the States. Like Australia, with its position in the Australasia region, is going to be very strategically significant for America's interests. So I'd be very surprised if they cut ties with Australia. I'm pretty sure they're setting up like bases, at least bipolar world. Yeah, I was trying not to use the word bipolar because of the implication, but it is funny, the bipolar world. And its resources. Yeah, bloody oath, its resources. Yeah, as anyone in mining will tell you. Hot tip, buy a property in a mining town. Or at least shares in a mining company. Yeah, look, America's strategic interests are with Australia. So, like, I don't know where this person got it from. However, if they were listening to mainstream media in Australia, the sentiment I got, apart from Sky News, obviously, was that the Australian mainstream media was generally against Trump. And so they were saying a lot of fear-mongering kind of stuff to the Australian population because they didn't want people to kind of, I don't know, support Trump in any way, shape or form. So they were coming out with these weird folks like he's going to cut off his strategic alliance with Australia, which I thought was absolutely stunning to hear them say, in the least. Is the election result surprising for you? Oh, I was waiting for someone to ask this question. Okay, is Sky News even watched in Australia? Even conservatives I know don't enjoy watching it. Look, man, it is hard. It is hard to watch. It is so difficult. Like, it's not news. Like, it's not news at all. It's just propaganda, which is why it's hilarious to watch. But, like, if you're actually looking for news and stuff, like, you can't watch it. Like, it's actually not news. Like, there's a segment on it called, like, Loony Lefties or something like that. Or, like, Lefties Losing It. So, like that's not actually, like, a news segment. That's just, like, them watching pictures of, like, or videos of, like, I don't know, drag queens crying and, like, stuff like that. It's really weird stuff. Or like libs in America crying at certain things that happen over there. So yeah, was it a surprise to me? Honestly, no. No, it wasn't. And like, I don't know. Okay, this is what I'm trying to contemplate in my mind. Is it just because I've been like purposely trying to screw with my algorithm and like getting it to feed me? Yeah, Lefty's losing it. Only person I know that watches it is my girlfriend's mum. And the stuff she parrots is so misinformed. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Like, it's really just great for entertainment value. But like, I don't know how these people like actually call themselves journalists and like media professionals. But like, yeah, I did see it coming, to be honest. Or like, I just had the feeling that this was way too close to call, and like it really could go either way. And like the vibe I was getting off people was just like, no, she's gonna win, or not that she's gonna win. That like the political establishment in America and like the economic elites, I guess, weren't gonna let Trump back in. Like I said, they had 8 years time to figure this out from when he first got elected. They were like, okay, how do we stop him from like having successive terms? Then like, let's say they did that, but they knew he was going to come back for another bite at the cherry. And so they've effectively had 8 years to figure out how to stop him from coming back. And like, I didn't see it like that. I really saw that like this was a race between Trump, the individual or the political iconoclast, versus the entire Democratic establishment. They kicked old Joe out, like literally just got rid of him at not the 11th hour, but pretty close to the mark. And then it's kind of like they put in what I would consider just a puppet. Like, it was really weird, in my opinion, how, like, for the first, he was like 2 months or something like that, she didn't do, like, an interview or anything. Like, that is so weird. Like, if you're a politician, you need to be able to speak in public. You need to be able to be attacked by people left, right, and center, hold your own, and then like be able to give it back as well. Like, people want to see that stuff. This is what like goes back to the question you were asking about like right wing, why there's a like this sentiment towards an increase in right wing attitudes, especially around young men. And like, it's because they like seeing that political veracity, like people being able to hold their own in a debate or a conversation and like, you know, cutting their adversaries to pieces. It's just something I think that young men like. And that is like a founding principle in modern politics as well. Like, the idea of the pursuit of happiness and freedom of expression is about being able to express yourself in a political forum, in the marketplace of ideas, and being able to like, you know, give it back to someone when they try and cut you down a couple of pegs in a debate or something like that. And Kamala Harris was not able to do that. Maybe she was being told not to do that, and so she was being kept on a tight leash in the background, or maybe she was, I don't know, not ready and she didn't want to go out yet. But like, you know, either way you look at it, like, that was really strange. And like, if you're looking at someone like Trump, right? You know, not scared of an interview, not scared of being in front of the camera, not scared of the like, you know, the campaign trail. Like, he was even campaigning after he had won the first time. He kept going out and doing rallies and stuff like that. That's his bread and butter. That's his life force. Like, you needed to have someone that could effectively counteract that. And like, yeah, she didn't have it in her. And so like, I saw that from whenever she had taken power 90 days ago, or was decided by the establishment she was going to be their pick. I saw that and I was like, this is not going to end well for the Democratic Party. Times like this really make you understand how the National Socialist Party was able to get majority in 1932. It's a good observation. And like, heaps of people think like, you know, or like, you know, when it comes to like this massive discussion that's happening all the time about how polarized politics is today, and like we're living through this unprecedented time with cancel culture and people attacking each other and being divided along tribal grounds and all this sort of stuff. Hello, like 1932 in Germany, like, you know, the brown shirts and communists and stuff were literally killing each other in the streets because they were so polarized. Like literally, they would like they were gangs, and they were like it's like gangs of New York, but like German style between Nazis and commies, and they would like just go out and just beat each other up and like take each other hostage and prisoner and stuff like that. Like brown shirts would be like attacking union members, and like they'd literally be killing each other in the streets. And like we've got that, like it's just a little bit more like civil now, I guess, a little bit. Like, okay, people attack each other verbally, they may not be attacking each other physically at that order of magnitude. But like, yeah, we've been here before. And so like, you know, it's not surprising what's happening at the moment. I would generally consider that 20 to 30% of Trump supporters would be all right with a Trump as a permanent authoritarian leader. I have considered this myself. Like, what happens if, like, you know, Trump apparently got the lower house, he's got Congress, he's got the Senate, and he's president. So, like, you know, if you wanted to change a constitution, you do it when you've got the majority. Like, that's how you would do it. Unless, like, there was bipartisan support for whatever constitutional change you were making. But, like, this would be the time to do it. Like, I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm sure a lot of his supporters would be happy with that for a large extent because they think that he's going to do well for the country. Like, it's very similar to what Xi Jinping did in China. Like, he's made himself ruler for life. I'm pretty sure Putin's done the same thing. Like, it's a very general trend in this world. And, like, we have to look at these things. Like, you know my channel. We have to look at these things from a capitalist analysis, okay? Because that's the economic mode of production is what gives you all the social relations that are out there. Has democracy served its purpose for capitalism? Not like, oh, what are the different like political trends that are going across the world? You're seeing the capitalist world is sorting itself out among certain lines. And is capitalism rejecting the idea of like representative government and stuff like that? And is capitalism forcing certain countries into having kind of rulers for life and authoritarian regimes? And like you could see this happening in America. Like I'm just saying, they have the building blocks for it. So whether or not most Trump supporters would like it or not, I don't know, but the framework is there for it. Dems also didn't understand the podcast generation either. People wanted long form, nuanced conversation from a political leader. Yeah, and she didn't want to go on anyone's podcasts either. And like, you know, like talking about the podcast generation, like it was massive. I think this was a massive factor in it. Like, I don't have any proof of that. I'm just going off vibes. But like Joe Rogan endorsing him at the last minute, that was massive. Like it was literally, yeah, like Taylor Swift versus Joe Rogan, who was going to win out on that front. If a major conflict started out like China and Taiwan, it could become a stomachable possibility for the rest of the public. Yeah, and it's nothing like a good like war, you know, to bring in like a world where people call themselves leader for life. Dictator Dottie. Now, yeah, look, I see that potentially happening. And like I've talked about this already on my channel before, there's a general kind of move in liberal democratic societies towards authoritarian. Look up Voter by Age and Gender. Your vibes will become concrete. I hate it when my vibes become real. Okay. Thank you, Jerry Poppins. So look up Photo by Age and Gender. It's interesting how they've been breaking it up by age and gender to the Americans this time. Like I know that like demographics always they break things up a lot, but like it's been such a focus, especially with the whole abortion thing, like breaking everything down to like what men versus women say, and then even like the age gaps between people. I really don't know if the Australian people would want to join Trump on a war effort. As you say, even the hyper-conservative news seems to be against him due to Murdoch changing allegiances. Look, I don't think it really comes down to what the Australian people want, unfortunately. I don't think Australian people have ever wanted really to get involved with, like, let's say, other people's wars. Because it's never like Australia has waged war on someone specifically. It's always been, hey, Britain's going to war with someone, America's going to war with someone. Do we need to look good for our masters? Yes. Do we need them in the future? Yes. Well, we better tag along for this one. Then the Chinese are very close by. What do you mean by that? What do you mean they're close by? Like in terms of our strategic interests, or like we might follow them into a war? Yeah, like I don't see it that like the Australian people have ever had a decision about whether we actually want to go to war or not. It's always been about whatever our masters at the time want to do. Look at the comment above that one. Oh, I don't really know if the Australian people would want to join a war, as you say. Conservative view seems to be against him. Sorry, still not following you there, Poppins. I love you. Sorry. But like, I'm going to go back to Biden for now. I really want to see how he finishes this one off. But keep the chat comments coming. I will answer you as soon as I see them. Apologies. Does Australia joining a hypothetical Sino-American war have anything to do with what party is in power in Australia? I personally think the outcome will be the same regardless. That's basically what I'm saying. Like, whether or not you've got Liberals, Labor, even the Greens, like in power, like it doesn't matter if the Americans say jump, we will say how high. But like I said, like I don't think our kind of usefulness to the Americans has anything to do with our military prowess. Like it's kind of insignificant to say the least. But our strategic, in terms of our geographical location, is everything. Like putting bases in strategic locations, having access to the resources, which Poppins talked about before. Like very important stuff. And like using those resources against China, very important. Like China does get its resource base somewhat from the Australians, but like that's what the point of the BRICS is about as well, is turning to alternate resource supply chains. So like Australia might not be that crucial for the Chinese very soon anyway. So, we shall see. So let's go back to what Biden was talking about for now.
Because it takes time to get it done. There's so much more it's going to take time. But it's there. The road ahead is clear, assuming we sustain it. There's so much we can get done and will get done based on the way the legislation was passed. And it's truly historic. We're leaving behind the strongest economy in the world. I know people are still hurting, but things are changing rapidly. Together, we've changed America for the better. Now we have 74 days to finish the term, our term. Let's make every day count. That's the responsibility we have to the American people. Look, folks, you all know it in your lives. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable.
Setbacks are unavoidable. Giving up is unforgivable. Like, they're really taking it hard. Well, obviously, right? He's a Democrat. Probably doesn't like this. This eventuality. But, like, he must be sitting there just being like, ha, 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 because, like, he was kind of backstabbed by the party and by, like, his own vice president. So, like, he must be secretly loving the fact that she didn't get in. Sorry, just back to the comments. I assume we are in agreement then that Trump's second term will be of much more historical significance. obviously evident by his Senate and House of Reps majority. Yes, yes, and more yes. Like, this is it. Like, you know, the first time was his kind of, you know, dance. You know, it was like, it was him having fun, like testing out the new car, taking it for a spin around the block. Now he's strapped in, and like, let's see kind of what he's going to be capable of pulling off. Like, there's somebody I want to draw your attention to, which is RFK, and like, this throws a massive spanner in the works for me in terms of like how RFK kind of fits in to like into the whole picture of the Trump kind of phenomenon. Like, he's a Democrat, and like, he endorsed Trump and stuff like that, and like, what's going on there? So I want to go over and have a look at like what he kind of has to say about like Trump's victory and stuff like that. It's like watching a baby horse try to walk after exiting the womb. He's already talking about dismantling the FDA. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm gonna have to go and try and find where I've seen him talk about stuff before. Oopsie. I wonder if I can find it this way. There you go. Here we go. Here's my man.
Strength and honor.
Oops, sorry. Ads again. Still waiting for you, Jerry Poppins. Whenever you want to fund my premium, you go for it, mate. I think I can skip this now. All right, here we go.
How does it feel to be a Kennedy helping Donald Trump return to the White House? And
Right?
have you talked to any of your family?
Right, what a question. RFK is all about food reform. Yeah, and like, that seems to be what he's negotiated with Trump, is to try and get some form of like control over American health. That seems to be his big problem, his big thing. Like, he was an environmental lawyer, and so like, he's obviously very like down with like environmental issues, but he seems to be, his massive focus is on health. And this is the thing that throws the real spanner in the works for me, is like talking about like the question before, like, you know, about whether or not like I saw Trump's victory coming, or like my opinions on it and all that sort of stuff. This is the dark horse for me. What the hell is RFK doing in Trump's camp? Like, some people I've talked to about this, they just put it down to the fact that, you know, he tried to run as a you know, Democrat, and they didn't want him. And so like, he went as an independent, and like, this was his chance to be like, up yours to the Democratic Party. But like, that just seems way too surface level for me. It's just way too easy that he would just be like, no, I'm just going to endorse Trump because as an up yours to the Democratic Party. He seems like too much of an accomplished man himself to just do that, just to be like, up yours, Democrats. Like, he must have an agenda, and like, his agenda somehow aligns with Trump's. So what's this? That was another killer move. Each key player had a talking point that stuck to it. JFK. Musk, yeah, like Tulsi as well. Like, yeah, he pulled over some very interesting characters that kind of muddied the waters about what Trump is really all about, kind of thing. And like, you can't balk at that. You can't discount that. And if like, people that are like anti-Trump or like kind of Democrat supporters and stuff, like, kind of just are just dismissive of like the effect that an RFK character can have in the vote. MAHA is Make America Healthy Again. Aw, that's nice. Yeah, you noticed that I skipped over that and I didn't say it. Why would the American people make dudes that are already the most powerful people in the world, Musk, even more powerful? Ha! Well, that's the American people for you. They love anyone that's, you know, idolizes the American dream, right? Or is the ideal, sorry, of the American dream. Sorry, bro, I've been going insane from the media landscape and the adoration of Musk. Well, look, it's interesting, isn't it? But like I said, like, this is not unusual for Americanism So really idealize kind of their economic elite. Like I said, they embody the American dream, and like with their great capital comes great power. And so like they are seen to be the movers and shakers in the American economy. America is, remember, the citadel, the beacon of world capitalism. And so like these large scale capitalists, these Elon Musks, these people that would have been called barons 100 years ago, like they are crucial to the American way of life. And so like they put a lot of value in what these people say and what these people do. And I think it's foreign to people that aren't American, I guess, as to why they put so much faith in these people. And like you can see the blurring together between economics and politics there, right? They're not separate at all. And like, people think, especially like in a capitalist setting and with a capitalist mindset, oh, you make a lot of money, then you must be good for the economy. And so your political decisions and the way that you analyze things politically must be valid. And so like it's hard for kind of us plebs, I guess, or maybe people that aren't American, like I said before, to really see what the appeal is there in terms of politics. You can understand very easily on face value why like people would like Musk for all of the things that he does in terms of his capitalist endeavors, because like he's become a sensation. Like he's a celebrity as opposed to just like a capitalist in the background who just makes billions and billions of dollars. So like, yeah, like there's just such a melding of politics and economics that like people will happily follow these people along certain political lines. And like, yeah, like Jerry Poppins has said, you cannot discount the coming together of these personalities. Like having Beyonce sing or like, endorse you, or having like Eminem endorse you or something like that. Like that's okay, but these people are like pop icons, okay? Like that's not a problem. But like, they have pop power, and like Taylor Swift. And like, so like people will just be like, oh yeah, well Taylor Swift shouldn't get involved with politics anyway, or Eminem shouldn't, Beyonce shouldn't, and they'll still love their music, but they won't listen to them politically, even if they have massive star drawing power. But like someone like Elon Musk, like I said before, like if he goes, all right, I'm going to endorse Trump, everyone's just like, well he's worth a lot of money, like kind of thing. I'll vote the way he's going to endorse things. RFK, political aristocracy, right? Like just the name, like he's the aristocracy of the political upper class in America, and like he's jumped ship to endorse Trump. People are sitting there going like, and me too, like I am bewildered by this. But like if you listen to the way he speaks, like it really becomes clear why the hell like he's done what he's doing. And like that's why I really want to talk about this speech. But I'm just going to his little interview here. But I'm just going to quickly check in on the chat. Does anyone else here think America is almost dystopian? I felt this for a while, but I don't know if it's generally held sentiment. Yes, the world is generally dystopian, but America absolutely. Like like the fact that they have like 30 million people living below the poverty line within that country, while you have billionaires and stuff like that, like playing like with the world, like kind of thing. It's so dystopian. And like he's going to talk about like how people are like controlled by like chemicals and pharmaceutical companies and all that sort of stuff. Like 100%. He's the only genius to have Starlink, SpaceX, electric cars, the borrowing company. Inventors have always been revered, and he has the monopoly on that. Zero competition. And he's an immigrant. Yeah, isn't that interesting as well, right? But like he's a safe immigrant, right? He's South African, isn't he? Yeah. So like he's from a nice Anglo country, yes, but doesn't embody the American dream. Immigrants legally and become a billionaire. Yeah, well he did it legally. And like that is part, I'm sorry, but that is part of the American dream. Like immigrants coming over to the land of milk and honey and making a name for themselves. That's part of it. bring out the Orwell 1984. BRICS has created created the other superpower this week and brought the story a little more to fruition. Yeah, the BRICS thing is interesting. I love the whole BRICS kind of dichotomy on the world stage now. Like, it's so good. Like, all I can think about is, like, when the USSR existed, right, the Americans had an actual competitor on the world stage, like, from, like, a Cold War perspective. But they also had an ideological competitor, all right? So it was American capitalism versus, like, I don't know, let's say Russian communism. And so in order to keep their own people subdued, the Americans that is, they had to kind of prove to them that, like, capitalism was the right way to go. And because there was a lot of people with, like, kind of working class sentiments that aligned with communist thinking, socialist thinking, all that sort of stuff. So they had to constantly prove to their people that the capitalist system was the best. And so they wanted to make sure it delivered good living standards, like there was kind of good standards in terms of, like, working conditions and stuff like that as well. So they let people unionize, they let them get better wins on the board as a working class. And so it kind of kept the American capitalist machine in check. And, like, BRICS is going to do that, like, to a certain extent. It's going to allow a level of competition on the world stage in that bipolar world that we were discussing before. So, like, yeah, BRICS is very interesting. It's really going to change the game, I think. Let's get back to my mate, the Enigma RFK.
Well, I had a lot of family here. So there was a lot of family that worked on the campaign, and they were here. So we had about 18 people here.
I'll be right
At
back.
the Mar-a-Lago dinner last night, and they're very happy. I'm sure there are members of my family that aren't that happy, but I've received a lot of congratulations from them too.
From some of the supporters of Vice President Harris,
Yeah.
you've received messages from.
Yeah.
For you, what have your conversations been like with Donald Trump? Donald Trump has said that he would put you in charge of the public health agencies. What exactly does that look like?
Well, he's been very specific in what he said. He wants me to do three things. One, clean up the corruption of the agencies, particularly the conflicts of interest that have turned those agencies into captive agencies for the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry, the other industries that they're supposed to be regulating. Number two, to return those agencies to the gold standard science, the empirically based, evidence-based medicine that they were famous for when I was a kid. And number three, to make America healthy again, to end the chronic disease epidemic. And President Trump has told me that he wants to see measurable, concrete results within 2 years in terms of a measurable diminishment in chronic disease among America's kids.
So is that specific role to be the Secretary of Health?
I don't know. We have not decided yet what my official role is going to be.
What did you tell him you would like that role to be?
That's why I didn't tell him. I've told him that I want to think about it.
So in that capacity, though, you feel confident that you have been given the assurance that you would be able to have an actual role in the administration that would allow you to make those sorts of decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. He's asked me to do that. President Trump is very committed to this issue. And he was committed to it before I came on board. In fact, he called me in 2016 when he won, and he wanted to do something like this back then. And for a variety of reasons, we ended up...
Isn't that interesting? Like, Trump was already touching base with RFK back in 2016 to talk about issues like this, like health and stuff like that. Wow, what's going on there? So, like, he seems to be kind of like this crusader, RFK that is, for, like, I don't know, health issues for the nation. And kind of, I guess, yeah, he's the shining light in terms of trying to bring the pharmaceutical companies and, like, the food industry and all of that sort of stuff. They're kind of trying to bring them back to reality. Like, they live in this kind of warped, mega capitalist world where they control everything, and, like, they get away with murder. And, like, no one seems to be able to regulate them properly. And, like, he seems to be kind of this RFK that is this kind of white knight out there that wants to no, save the American population from all the chemicals that they're being bombarded with. He's always been a dark sheep of the Kennedy family. Fair enough, fair enough. But like, I think it was still really tough for him, obviously, and his family as well, to kind of make this move. And that's why, like, such an enigma. What's going on there? What's going on there? Like, changing your political, like, allegiances like that's massive, and had an extra following that didn't align with Trump. Yeah, I guess so. So maybe it works for him, I guess, strategically. But like, that's, I think, what is going to happen here. Like, he's going to demonstrate that, like, you know, Trump just aligns with like the kind of issues that he's really battling for, which is like, he just cares about people's health, and whatever the party's going to deliver that to him, he's going to do it. And isn't it just weird though? Like, you know, like, for people to kind of have to deal with the idea that if this person, the RFK, is all about health, and Trump aligns more with those kinds of ideals than the Democrats, like, there is a political realignment happening in the United States at the moment, in terms of like where the values shift along certain lines and stuff like that. We are living in very, very, very interesting times. You don't often see political realignments. Like, they happen like very, very rarely. I think the last one in American politics was at the turn of the last century, when the Democrats kind of became the left-wing party and the Republicans came the right-wing. Previously, it was different to that. Like, it was opposite. So like, there seems to be almost a realignment happening. Anyway, let's get back to what they're saying.
But as far back as June of this year, he was doing tweets that looked like I had written them, you know, talking about chronic disease and the necessity, how debilitating it is for our country. When my uncle was president, 6% of our kids had chronic disease. Today it's 60%. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans were obese. Today it's about 70%.
Put the subtitles on for you.
In other countries that don't have all these poisons food, like Japan, it's still 3%.
He needs subtitles, this guy. Oh my god. I remember the first time I heard RFK speaking, like, I was really struggling to keep up with him. He's a difficult man to listen to. And it's unfortunate because it seems like he's got a lot of good things to say.
And when my uncle was president, I was a 10-year-old boy. We spend zero on chronic disease in this country. Today, we spend $4.3 trillion. So it's 5 times our military budget. It's existential for our country.
5 times the military budget. Like, I'm not going to go ahead and fact check what RFK is saying, but like, think about that. Like, they spend on like health or chronic disease, he said specifically there, 4.5 trillion, which is like more than they spend on their military budget. And like, their military budget is insane by comparison to like the closest country or anything like that. So like, wow, they do have a big concern there. If they could get like health matters under wraps, like, what a saving economically they would have, and they'd be able to distribute those resources to the rest of like people around there, and had an extra following that time. Yeah, sorry, I've read that already. Yeah, interesting how much money they pour. And like, doesn't that say something? Like, let's look at this from a Marxist perspective. Let's do our anti-capitalist analysis on this. Like, how enormous is the health industry in America, the massive like transnational corporations that feed off the health industry there. I'm looking at you, pharmaceutical corporations. Like, they are living off so much money that comes and is funneled through the American taxpayer straight into their transnational corporation coffers. Like, that's bigger than the military industrial complex. That's mental. Like, I don't hear that talked about really at all. But like, you know, maybe I'm just not down with the political conversation. But like, you know, something that dwarfs the military industrial complex in terms of its annual turnover. Wow.
Cannot qualify for military service because of chronic disease diagnosis. We have to put an end to this.
Would you like to be nominated to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services?
Like I said, I don't know if that's the post that I want. I may be more effective in the White House as a health czar or something like that, but we don't know. We haven't decided. We're meeting today on these issues.
Would that be ideally looking over the 13 health agencies that fall under HHS?
Pretty sure this this video of him speaking here was done like pretty soon after Trump claimed victory. Like it was like just the next morning or something. So like this was pretty soon after the event.
That would be one way to do it. There's other ways to do it too.
You said you're meeting with now President-elect Donald Trump here this afternoon.
I'm meeting with his team, with his senior team today.
What is your plan these next 3 months?
I plan to spend a lot of time in Palm Beach over the next 3 months meeting with the team, putting together. We have a 30-day plan, we have a 60-day plan, and we have a 190-day plan. There are things that we want to get done very quickly.
Have you been given assurance that you would have a staff even?
Yeah, I will. And I don't want to talk about specifics about what the administration
Well, then
is.
what is your plan come day one? What is at the top of your list that you want to make sure you, with the power, you've watched a lot of administrations over the course of the last several decades. What do you want come January 2025 to do on day one?
I'm going to do things that clean up the corruption in the agency. That's the really.
This is
we
big.
Have 1,000 ingredients.
This is big, right? Like talking about cleaning up corruption in like an industry that is larger in monetary value than the military industrial complex, the health industrial complex, let's call it. Like that is like good luck, because like, you know, a lot of people disappear when they go after like the health industry in America. So like, you know, if he's going to try and clean that up a bit and like get some regulation back into it, or like some standards, ethical standards back into it, like good luck. What have we got in the chat here? In regards to pharma, Trump stated a transparent pricing act for medical institutions. Democrats stopped enforcing it in 2020. RFK is going to bring that back too. It's interesting. Transparent pricing, it's always good. U.S. Election 24, old establishment versus the new establishment. Yeah, and like, what is even old establishment anyway? Like, is old establishment, like, do we insinuate by old establishment, or we mean like, you know, the Democrats and stuff like that, and like their heavily ingrained kind of political and economic kind of donors and rulers of that party, versus like Trumpism and like his, you know, anti-establishment kind of rhetoric and views on the world? Or is there like old and new establishment, like, which is old money versus new money? So you have kind of like the older military industrial complex and the oil tycoons versus like maybe some of the new tech giants versus some of the kind of resource tycoons in America. So like, yeah, it's an interesting battle that's going on in American politics at the moment. And like, it's interesting to try and dissect what old establishment versus new establishment actually means, because there's so many interpretations on that. But like, you know, never a dull moment in US politics.
And our food that are illegal in Europe, that are illegal in other countries, and they're making our kids sick.
So does that mean taking like boxes?
They're there because of corruption in our agencies.
Does that mean using the agencies to ban those products in
There's
US
a lot
food
of different
supply?
ways to do it. And I've talked very extensively about that on podcasts, etc.
So you would potentially seek to
What
do that?
what my job is not to do as little top-down control as possible and just get good information to the American people. So we don't have good science because the agencies deliberately don't do that science because they don't want people to know what they're eating. And what I'm going to do is make sure that Americans have good information, the best gold standard science about their food and medicines, and then leave the choice to them.
You have been a crusader on questioning vaccines. Are there specific vaccines that you would seek to take off the market?
No, I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine.
You will not take any vaccine that is currently on the market.
I'm not. If vaccines are working for somebody, I'm not going to take them away. People ought to have choice, and that choice ought to be informed by the best information. So I'm going to make sure the scientific safety studies and efficacies are out there, and people can make individual assessments about whether that product is.
He's touching on an interesting issue that is modern day capitalism, like, you know, this late stage capitalism that we're talking that like we can refer to now, is that one of the big things in like Marx's analysis of like capitalism generally is like this idea that like the forces of production, so like all of the knowledge and the scientific processes or processes up to that point is what gives you all the value in society, all of the production capability. All right, so science, basically modern industry, and like advances in science help society continue to progress and develop the modes of production. Now, what's interesting is going on with capitalism is that because of the profit motive and the continual need to kind of increase profits at a compounding rate, especially, is that the science is now being held back by the capitalist process itself. So what he's touching on is this idea that like you can't research in science anymore without basically getting, because like, you know, you need a lot of funding to be able to do proper research. It costs a lot of money. So like you need the funding up front to be able to engage in research. Now, science research isn't funded by, you know, a body or an organization unless the results are kind of guaranteed. So like, let's just say you're in the pharmaceutical industry and like you want to make a product that is going to do this, and you need science to back up that this product is going to work, then you will fund a research project and scientific research that is guaranteed or almost guaranteed to support your product or support your idea on something. Now that is a fundamental like problem with the essence of science. Science should be devoid of that type of influence. They should be able to do the research, and whatever the findings may be, the findings may be, and that's how we progress as a species in terms of our understanding on how the world works. But like if we have come to a point, like in the Western world especially, where our scientific knowledge is being limited now by only what is profitable. So like we're not investing in research and development. We're just investing in research that supports the money-making side of things. That is becoming a hindrance to the human race. That is a big problem. And it is a sign that the mode of production, so capitalism as a way of living, is basically becoming a stumbling block for the progression of the human species. That is a massive problem because knowledge is supposed to be able to develop at pace with like kind of the way that society is developing. And when it starts to be held back like that, there is dire consequences, people. Like we will start to stagnate and like we potentially even start to go backwards. And for what? And for what? In the name of profit? Like, I get it, okay? I understand that profit is important. It makes the capitalist system go around. But like, scientific knowledge, it doesn't need to be held back by that. We can have profits everywhere else. Not everywhere else, but like we can have profits in other areas. Do we need to hold back our collective consciousness, our ability to develop our culture as a human race just for profit? And this is why capitalism is such a problem. It gets to these points where like it's holding us all back. That's why we're revolutionaries. Oh, I was able to get it in there somehow. Let's get back to what RFK is talking about.
Good for them.
Would that include COVID vaccines that are currently on the market?
I want the best science for every vaccine.
It is part of that during the pandemic.
This guy's like a dog with a bone, isn't he? Far out. You just won't let him go.
At the height of the pandemic, you were questioning the FDA and calling them out for approving the emergency authorization of the COVID vaccines. If you had been in charge of the FDA at that time, would you have blocked the authorization of the COVID vaccines, like you were suggesting publicly?
What I was saying at that time is the vaccines are not going to prevent transmission, which they were telling the public that they would. They were saying, you need to take this vaccine in order to protect grandma. I knew in May of 2020 that the vaccines were not going to protect against transmission because I was actually reading the monkey studies.
But you would not have told the FDA. You would not have told the FDA to block the authorization on
I would have been honest with the American people.
And so you wouldn't have blocked it.
Ooh, honesty, eh? That's an old school policy, eh? Bit of honesty.
I would have been honest with the American people now.
So you wouldn't have blocked it.
I wouldn't have directly blocked it. I would have made sure that we had the best science, and there was no effort to do that at that time.
And if there was another pandemic that were to strike, why should the American public have confidence that you would allow a vaccine to be made available through the market, even it's on
Well, I mean, let me point this out. That they should not have confidence in the people who are managing our pandemic. We had the worst record of any country in the world. So we had 16% of the COVID deaths in the United States of America. We only had 4.2% of the globe's population. So whatever we were doing in this country was the worst of every country in the world.
So in order to do that, you say clearing out the corruption in your terms. Would that mean clearing out the top level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and the CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah.
In some categories of workers, there are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go. That are not doing their job. They're not protecting our kids. Why do we have Fruit Loops in this country that have 18 or 19 ingredients, and you go to Canada and it's got 2 or 3?
Would you eliminate any of the agencies?
To eliminate the agencies, as long as it requires congressional approval, I wouldn't be doing that. I can get the corruption out of the agencies. This is what I've been doing for 40 years. I've sued all those agencies. I have a PhD in corporate corruption, and that's what I do. And once they're not corrupt, once Americans are getting good science.
Isn't that interesting? Like, he's got a PhD in corporate corruption. Like, what a very strange thing to have a PhD in. What a topic. Like, it's obviously, like, this is one of the contradictions of, like, this capitalist mode of production, right? Like, it is so obvious that, like, it is an issue. The way that corporations work, or, like, capitalists work, it's so obvious that they work off nefarious means, which are, like, actually illegal. Like, corruption is a discussion about something that is not allowed. It's not like that borderline kind of gray area stuff where it's just like, it's a legal loophole. Like, corruption is stuff that is actually illegal, and, like, he has a PhD in how to basically deal with corporations that do things illegally. And it's called corporate corruption, his PhD. It's not a PhD in, like, criminality or criminal justice or something like that. It's corporate corruption. So it's an acknowledgement within the establishment, and, like, just within our psyche in this mode of production that is capitalism, that, like, yeah, corporations do illegal stuff, and, like, there's certain people out there that take them to task, but, like, hey, it's just business, man. It's just how we do things here in capitalism. And, like, we will continue to do that until somebody comes along, like our old mate here, who comes along to try and challenge that sort of stuff. And it's just business. It's, yeah, corporate corruption. It's business, man. Like, what are you going to do? Throw them in prison? That's definitely not going to happen in America. And it definitely doesn't. Like, white-collar crime, basically, that's what his PhD is in. White-collar crime they don't get actually, like, in trouble for that type of stuff.
And are allowed to make their own choices. They're going to get a lot healthier.
You've also talked about fluoride in the U.S. waters.
It's a Bryce Lee thing. Profit at the path of least resistance. Yes, and, like, that's interesting observation. That's really good, because, like, capitalism in terms of, yeah, why does he speak like that? I don't know if he was born like this or he's just, like, shouted a lot throughout his lifetime. Maybe he's just done too many drugs. Like, I don't know, but, like, it's hard to hear him speak. Oh my god. Yeah, profit will find the path of least resistance. It's a very, very interesting observation, that one, Jerry Poppins, because that's exactly how you think of capital. Okay, if like you want to crash course in capitalism 101, think of capital as like kind of this commodity, this entity, whether it takes the money form or the form of goods or whatever, that like will find, like water, will find the way to flow with the path of least resistance, and it will just rush down that avenue until it's blocked, and then it will find a way to do that. That's such a good analogy. Thank you, Master Poppins. We have much to learn from you.
Supply. You would seek to ban fluoride in the U.S. water supply?
Well, I would advise the water districts that are currently using it that there's a lot of new science out there. And in fact, there's a federal judge decision by an Obama-appointed judge on October 4th of this year in which he sent EPA back to the drawing board and said, you've never done the safety studies on this. And by the way...
So what does that look like without debating, without knowing, without going back and forth on the science and what it shows
it's
here?
Lowering IQ in our children.
What would you, upon January 2025, we're 3 months away here, what would you actually do in your position inside of the White House?
Its way out.
And how do you make that happen? This is your chance, is what you're suggesting to me. How would you make that happen?
Listen to what I'm saying. Okay?
Yeah, listen, bro. He's like a dog with a bone, this one. Like, he just won't let this guy speak. It's hilarious.
Okay.
I think Florida is on the way out because of that court decision. I think the faster that it goes out, the better. I'm not going to compel anybody to take it out, but I'm going to advise the water districts about their legal liability, their legal obligation to their service zones and to their constituents, and I'm going to give them good information about the science, and I think that fluoride will disappear.
What did Donald Trump tell you when you guys were having conversations while you were still an independent presidential candidate? It was a major endorsement when you dropped out of the race and backed his candidacy. What was that conversation like?
There was a number of conversations. Essentially, he said to me, let's unify our parties because the landscapes on which we agree are much larger than those issues on which we disagree, and we'll continue to disagree on those. In ending the addiction to foreign wars, we both want to do that. Ending the surveillance, the censorship, the media collusion and that censorship, we want to end that. And then...
For IS, yo, what's up? We are just going through and just, I don't know, debriefing after the U.S. election, and we're just trying to make sense of everything that's happened. We've looked at Biden, him speak. We've looked at some commies from the UK speak about it, like really briefly, like these ones here. They're the Revolutionary Communist Party, and we're just now listening to RFK speak about like the old Trump victory and like what he's going to be doing next in terms of his input. So everyone should read Civil Disobedience by Thoreau. Oh, okay, that's old school. Yeah, so we're just like trying to understand what it is that RFK is got to do with the Trump victory now, and like what he'll be adding to this new administration.
Making Americans healthy again. And those are three big issues, and for me, and we agree 100% on those issues, so let's do it.
What was it like to be a Kennedy at a Republican victory party for president last night?
It was very unusual. I never thought I'd be there.
Yeah, what a question, hey? Like a Kennedy at a Republican victory party. Interesting.
Finally here, over the course of the next 3 months, is there any assurance, we have seen this is going to be our second Donald Trump administration, and there was a lot of folks that came into his first White House who came in with what they said were good intentions. Donald Trump ultimately cast them aside, fired them, let them go from the administration. What gives you confidence that Donald Trump is going to be loyal to you and your mission come 2025?
Well, President Trump said to me on several occasions, we've talked about what happened in 2016, and he said, I got there and I wasn't able to, I was not prepared to govern. I was surrounded by corporate lobbyists and corporate CEOs, and they said, appoint that guy, appoint this guy, appoint that guy. And he said, I appointed a lot of bad people. And in fact, there was probably a higher turnover on his cabinet in the first year or 2 years than any other cabinet in history, because he was realizing he appointed a lot of bad people. He said, this time I'm concerned about my legacy. I only have 4 years. I want to leave America better. And the key to that for me is to ending the chronic disease epidemic, and I want you to do it. So that was an offer I couldn't refuse.
How much of a role do you think you played in his victory last night? How much of a role did he say you had?
Good question.
I have not had that conversation with President Trump, and the victory belongs to him, not to me.
Finally,
I think he would have been instrumental. Like, you know, like those players that we were talking about before with Jerry Poppins. Like, he's got Tulsi, RFK, Elon Musk figures all out there endorsing him with massive weight politically and economically. And like that would have really turned the tide, I think, and like got him a lot of support from people that might have been on the fence or not even thinking about coming out and voting at all. And they would have encouraged these people to come out. That's incredible. Like even Joe Rogan at the end of the day, like, you know, that's an interesting one. Coming out and endorsing Trump at the last minute. Like all of these things, these would have been massive factors. Like talk about cults of personality, right? Like putting Trump in there with those three, like massive number game thing going on there. He also instrumental in removing his name from ballots that would have taken votes from Trump. He kept his name on ballots that would have hurt Kamala. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Because like he didn't technically drop out of the race, like what this guy had said. Like he was still in the presidential race. However, he had endorsed Trump. Like there was still a case where, like, you know, let's say they couldn't split them along the electoral college votes, that he could have kind of been called in as a third party or something like that. So he still ran. He just endorsed Trump. Have you covered Jonathan Py's video yet? No, actually, I wanted to do that. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to put you down, RFK. As exciting as you have been and how beautiful your voice is. Let's go for that. Jonathan Thurston. No, thank you. Let's go. Pie and U.S. election. Let's go. Calls the U.S. election? No, not that one. Trump wins again. This is the one that I've seen people talking about. Oh my god. I'm still waiting, Poppins. I'm going to pay for my YouTube Premium membership. There's a link for my... Good time for a plug while there's an ad playing in the background. I'm on Patreon now, so please follow the link in the description. Join the community, please. You can join and sign up for free. Doesn't matter. Just come over and be part of the conversation. We can have a better communication channel over there. Please join us.
A liberal meltdown.
All right.
I'm not having a liberal meltdown. Yeah, I'm just disappointed Trump won, right? I'm sure I'll get over it. It's hardly a meltdown, is it? I'm not thinking of hanging Mike Pence or taking a shit on the Speaker of the House's desk. It's hardly a proper meltdown, is it? Didn't he do well? Eh? First time round, he shocked the world. This time round, it was all but inevitable. He has been given, as he says, a powerful mandate, a conclusive cross-demographic coalition, proving once again that just relying on the vote of city-dwelling, latte-swilling liberal women doesn't win elections. One of the Democrats' final TV adverts was directly to women, and it essentially said, it's fine to vote for Kamala, just don't tell your husband. Yet when you're relying on women to vote for you, don't patronise them by making out they're all wife-battered wallflowers, because if you do that, you will lose. So what we're doing? An explainer of the results. What? Like he fucking smashed it. And she just spunked a couple of $1 billion up the wall on the most limp-dicked campaign in history.
Yes.
Something like that? You know?
Yes.
Hey, look what happened.
No.
Is this crazy?
Boo. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, she had
not
millions
having
of
a
dollars
liberal
behind her
meltdown.
campaign. Like, millions and millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And it was rather lackluster in the end. It's really disappointing, like, to see that much capital thrown at something. In a capitalist society, that much money thrown at something. And, like, it was just... It didn't register in the end. It's interesting, isn't it?
Dict campaign in history. Something like that, you know. How long have I got? Okay. What about if you're genuinely trying to understand why America would vote for a convicted felon, a fraudster, a known liar and adjudicated rapist who paid off a porn star with campaign finances and then lied about it? Stay tuned. All election, I've been asking, what are her policies? And the answer from Democrats has invariably been, well, what are his? Which is no answer at all. They had all the reasons not to vote for one candidate, but no reasons to vote for the other. Nothing on policies, nothing on immigration, no attempt to persuade the electorate that economically America is doing rather well, actually, thank you very much. Once again, the Democrats have absolutely failed to effectively address the concerns of millions of Americans, particularly the millions who voted for Trump before and just voted for him again. Kamala...
In fairness, though, to the Democrats, right? I had read a book in the lead up to the election about, like, kind of what the Democratic strategy was going to be in terms of, like, fighting, like, Republicans generally, not just Trump, but, like, generally. And, like, they don't go into defense mode anymore. So, like, if the general conversation is something like, oh, well, the economy's doing bad, like, kind of thing, like, don't expect Kamala Harris to stand up and say, no, the economy's doing well, and here's why. Because, like, apparently the way that the human psyche works, or the human psyche in, you know, 21st century electoral politics works, is that, like, as soon as you're on the back, like, as soon as you're defensive, like, you're like, no, actually the economy is well and we did this and that, it looks like you're on the back foot, and that is, like, massively damaging for you politically. It's a very interesting way that, like, I guess humans react to, like, politics and, like, the way that people, like, converse generally. But, like, that's their kind of playbook. But, like, he's right, they had what? Like, I didn't really hear them talk too much about policy in the lead up to this election at all. Like, really, like, at all. It was just like, Trump's a fascist, like, we need freedoms, and, like, he's going to take your rights away and all this sort of stuff. I didn't really hear them talk about, like, what amazing policies. Not like you really ever do, like, them actually get into the nitty-gritty of their policies, but, like, wow, it was really devoid of any of that type of conversation this time.
Kamala Harris has completely ignored a genuine beef these people have. A huge section of America thinks the state is corrupt and wields too much power over normal people's lives and just serves the rich and the powerful. And they're not wrong. Trump didn't create this belief, he just used it. He harnessed it to his own ends, but he is the only person talking about these.
We were talking about this before with Shazam. Like, this is exactly right. This is what right-wing people and reactionaries do so well. They know what the sentiment is, and then they weaponize it to their own ends. It's really, really crafty. You've got to give it to them. They really do this well. To their own ends, though. To their own ends. They're not doing it because, like, they know that people are upset about something and they want to address issues properly. That's the unfortunate reality.
He's voicing concerns that nobody else is. And when Donald Trump says he plans to dismantle the deep state and reclaim democracy from Washington, that might sound chilling or perhaps a bit authoritarian, but to many normal, sane Americans, that sounds amazing. Taking a flamethrower to governmental institutions is a genuinely attractive offer to millions of Americans. It's not about left or right or good versus evil. It's not about MAGA. It's not about religion or abortion. They just feel powerless. They feel the state doesn't protect them from injustice. It just protects itself. And Kamala Harris has completely ignored the issue, handing Trump the keys to the White House as well as the Senate and possibly the House in the process, whilst thinking we're right and he's wrong and that's good enough for us. Shame on them. The feeling all across America is at least he's going to do something. At least something will change. If you're going to go head to head with a man who is willing to lie through his teeth to get elected, who will say anything to get elected, then you better have something better to say yourself. Instead of...
That's a good point. Like, it really did feel like, and we talked about this earlier, that there was this, like, if you're going to like go up against Trump, the phenomenon that is Trump, then you're going to have to do something different or do something better. And like, she was unable or ineffectual to actually fight him on the ground or like offer a viable alternative to what he was offering, which is all the things that Jonathan Pye has just listed then. And so, like, you know, go figure. Go figure. What were the Democrats doing when they just gave such a lackluster campaign attack? Maybe they really just thought, like, all the hundreds of millions of dollars that they poured into the campaign and, like, money equals power, so then, you know, money will just win the election. The more money you throw at it, the better your chances are. Well, like, they didn't hit the heartstrings. Here we are.
All we got was this puke-inducing on the sofa with Oprah bullshit. This election is about joy over hate. It's about lifting people up. No, it isn't. It's about who is going to actually do something, change something. You can't just run on sunshine and lollipops and just not being the other guy. If she's not going to do anything meaningful, then why vote for her? And it's almost like no one gives a fuck which rich Hollywood A-listers are supporting Kamala Harris. It's almost as if unless Katy Perry, Harrison Ford, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Eminem, DiCaprio or Clooney have got a new film or an album out to plug, then no one gives a fuck. What are her policies?
That's what I said. Like, honestly, like, it's a good point. Like, you get some celebrities, like musicians and stuff. Like, people would just be like, well, I don't agree with you, but I like your music. And then that's done. But if you have someone like Elon Musk, who's a billionaire because, you know, they embody the American dream because they're a capitalist and, like, they worked for every cent that they're worth. Oh, yeah, sure. But, like, for the layman, for the average person, like, they have political clout. Like, in terms of their political opinions mean something. So people are more than happy to listen to Taylor Swift, but then reject her completely when it comes to her politics. But like someone like Elon Musk, they're just like, oh, but like, he must be good for the economy. It's the same phenomena with Trump. Like, most people, just because he's a, you know, he's a multi-millionaire, he's a billionaire, or whatever he is, they're just like, oh, he must be good for the country. Because he's been good in business.
Policies. How's she going to help me feed my kids? What's she going to do about the border? Fuck all. She doesn't have to do anything because she's just been endorsed by Sean Bean, Orlando Bloom and Dick Van Dyke. No one cares. Trump had Dr. Phil and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And he still fucking won.
Hulk Hogan.
Real
So good. Did anyone actually see like Hulk Hogan talking at like Madison Square Garden or whatever? Hilarious. I think he was calling it Trump mania. Like, American politics is fucking hilarious. Like, honestly, Hulk Hogan, so good. Like, do yourself a favor. Go and have a look at some footage of it. Maybe we'll do it later.
Villain Elon Musk beavering away on X, spreading a flurry of slurry across the Gooniverse, and Jeff Bezos crouched in a filleting position ready to receive the royal orange cock of the tax-dodging multi-millionaire felon who's now running the show. America is now a fully fledged plutocracy. So no real change there then. He will govern largely untrammeled this time. The drainer of swamps, the melter of snowflakes has returned to take America back to the good old days of lynchings, mass deportations and coat hanger abortions. An America where the denial of fact is government policy, where truth takes a back seat in favour of a brash, lying narcissist hell-bent on revenge and chaos. Okay, yeah, let's go. Well, a decisive win for Donald Trump. The Democrats have a lot of soul-searching to do. However, the Democrats did make history by getting the first out transgender person elected to the US Congress. So it's not all bad. A small but significant gain there. But when we take a look at the electoral...
It's not a hybrid. It's a Honda hybrid.
That's right away. That's an interesting one. Let's just do it. Just for lols. Eh? Hulk Hogan, Trump. Let's see if it comes out. Like, did anyone actually see it? What do we got in the chat though? Pie basically says this race was vibes versus policy. Democrats was a small target strategy. Small targets get you into power from opposition, not stay in power. Yeah. And Jerry Poppins, I do have Netflix, but like, am I going to change that for YouTube Premium so I can live stream with you people without having to hear ads? I don't know, man. How about you just pay for my YouTube Premium, Jerry Poppins? It would be lovely. Let's see if this is the one that I saw that was hilarious. It calls Trump my hero. American politics, man. Hilarious stuff. That was really loud. Oh my god, I'm sorry. Yeah, another plug. Please, if you're liking what's going on, give me a comment, like, and subscribe for more. Come on, people, please. You know what to do.
Do something, brother.
It's funny already. Come on, brother.
You know something? When I came here tonight, there was so much energy in this room. I felt maybe I was in Madison Square Garden getting ready to win another world title. Or maybe I thought...
How good are wrestlers at speaking and geeing up audiences? Like, this is their bread and butter. Like, why has no one thought of this already? If you want to run a really good rally of some sort, get a wrestler in there to gee up the crowd. Like, this is political genius. And like, look at this guy. Like, how old is he now? He's got to be like 70 or something like that. Such energy. He must be on something.
The vibe was so intense, the energy was so crazy, it felt like maybe I was gonna press that no-good stinky giant over my head and slam him through the mat, brother.
Brother. So good.
But what I found out was I was in a room full of real Americans, brother.
Oh, this is from 3 months ago. Oh, too bad. But like, you get the vibe. The vibe, eh? It's a big part of this election. You get the vibe. Having Hulk Hogan in an electoral process, my god. Like, yeah. The game has changed. The game has changed. It's just about G-ups and vibes. You're definitely right there. There's no denying that. Alright, let's go back to our communist friends and see what their take is on Trump coming to power. Alright?
Things from them, not just in terms of their own polls and popularity, but in terms of their interests abroad. I mean, we can talk about Britain, but also what British imperialism has been trying to maintain in the world. I mean, one of the first things that I thought about when, you know, we saw the
such a change in vibe just then, isn't it? Hey? Vibe is going to be the word of the live stream. I know I'm a bit late to the party on that one, but like, let's go with it. Like, from Hulk Hogan to British communists. Hey, who would have thought?
The announcement about Trump was Ukraine,
Yeah,
and Zelensky.
Zelensky, who's also offered his congratulations to Trump very quickly. He's obviously quite worried about what's going to happen now to the Ukrainian war effort against Russia.
Well, exactly. I mean, Trump has made it, you know, quite clear throughout his election campaign that he wants to see a quick end to the war in Ukraine. And that goes against what Starmer and Lammy have been pushing for. I mean, it was only a month or so ago, right, that Starmer and Lammy flew to Washington to ask Biden for approval for missiles to be launched into Russia.
They basically went there saying we should escalate this conflict.
And even at that time, Biden said...
I think it's a good point. Like, we have to kind of consider geopolitically now what the hell's going to happen with Ukraine and all that sort of stuff with Trump. Eh? Interesting. Let's see what they have to say.
No, you guys need to hold...
I was looking for more of a communist kind of analysis, like an anti-capitalist kind of analysis of what's going on, as opposed to just talking about geopolitics. But like, you know, it's 29 minutes long, so maybe like they'll get there eventually.
Back. And so Trump is going to be even further removed from that sort of idea. And that's going to be very difficult for them to manage because they've invested a lot in trying to whip up propaganda for further supporting the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, and extending it. I mean, they are going to be Trump has promised that he's going to bring that war to an end.
Yeah.
He's probably going to do that with what will basically be quite a bad deal for Ukraine.
Yeah.
Probably there will be costs involved. Maintaining the peace, maybe some kind of neutral zone in between the two countries, who knows? But the costs involved are going to be borne by the Europeans. Well, we were talking just before we started recording, and you were pointing out that Britain has guaranteed a number of loans to Ukraine. It's underwritten a load of its debt, basically. That debt's not getting paid back, no way. And Britain is also going to then have to pay some of the costs of maintaining security in the region, as will the other European nations. They're going to have to sell this incredibly expensive and incredibly bad peace deal after years of whipping up war.
No.
Boris Johnson.
Not feeling it. Sorry, everyone. Let's stop with these two commies for now. And let's go on to something that was suggested to me by Max Taylor, one of the subscribers, separately. I haven't seen this channel before. Maximilian Robespierre. If you have, I'm not sure. But like, it's an analysis of what this person thinks happened with like the Trump election. And so I'm assuming it's going to be a left-wing analysis, maybe even a communist one. Robespierre, I don't know, like the name of the channel kind of insinuates some type of revolutionary kind of perspective on all of this, but let's see what this person has to say about it, and we'll unpack it as we go.
Hi guys. My goodness, what the hell?
My goodness.
Now, I just wanted to put together a few thoughts I had on what's come to pass. Donald Trump becoming President of the United States once again. And I was wrong. I was wrong because I put my trust in experts. I quoted a man called Alan Lichtman, who has been correct about pretty much every election since 1984, bar 2000. And he had predicted, using his model, Kamala Harris' victory. And he was wrong. Very wrong. Now the polls were all...
I get the vibe from this person already that like they are upset that Trump won, and they are also upset that they were so poor in their own predictions of it. We spoke about this much earlier in the stream, if you were not around for that, about like, you know, what my predictions were on it. And so if you missed that, it was kind of just basically along the lines of, I thought this was way too close to call, and there were a lot of people kind of just dismissing, saying that like in the circles that I was kind of like of discussion that I was a part of, were like, oh, the establishment's not going to let Trump in, and like, you know, like he hasn't got a chance kind of thing. But like, you know, here we are, and like this person obviously didn't think that Trump was going to get in at all either.
So wrong. But then the polls are always wrong. But we expect the experts to be right, not the politicians or the pollsters. That's a major problem. That's a major problem for me.
Experts
can
be wrong.
Hanging on about listening to experts over politicians on this channel. So that's something I'm going to have to revisit. Now, I keep saying that elections are referendi on the incumbent. And my gut was telling me that the Democrats would...
Yeah, whenever anyone asked my opinion on who would win, I was just like, I don't know, it's too close to call. Yeah, it's too close to call, but like there were a lot of definite like out there. There were a lot of people that were really like, nah, you know, they're just not going to let Trump kind of back in or anything like that. Or like, I don't know if we have like a warped perspective in Australia because of our mainstream media, and like they were very anti-Trump for the most part. So like, you know, I don't know, maybe that's a part of it.
Lose it. But my head was telling me that Kamala Harris would win because I was listening to the experts. So sometimes maybe we need to go with our gut. Now, elections are generally lost, not won. So the Democrats lost this election and lost massively. They have to go away and they have to have a think about why they lost. But I want to bring up somebody who said something very clever many years ago, a comedian called George Carlin. And he said, the public are to blame. Now, this is not something that politicians will ever say, and it's not something very popular. But the public are to blame here. Anti-immigration sentiment, for example, is something that exists.
Yeah, blaming the voters. But like, what do you think is going to happen? in an election.
In society. And politicians can only take advantage of that if people don't switch on their brains. George Carlin said that politicians don't fall from the sky, I'm paraphrasing here, or don't spring out of the ground. They come from the general public. So if the politicians are crap, it's probably because the general public are crap. Too many people are happy to blame immigrants or minorities of any sort on their problems. I can't get a job, well, it's because of the immigrants. I can't get a GP appointment because of foreigners. And of course, politicians tap into that anger. And the general public need to take a step back, as I often say, and think about it critically. Is it the immigrants' fault that I can't get a GP appointment? Is it the immigrants' fault that I can't get a job?
Yeah, but like, this is okay when you are... Yeah, I know, funny, right? Good quote. Politicians are crap because people are crap. Like, yes, okay, so like they are a reflection of society, I get that. And this is a really good point. If you are coming from the standpoint, right, that the average person is a discerning individual with like actual, like, I don't know, free thought and like an unmolded mind, one that hasn't been pressed into like a certain kind of, I don't know, echo chamber or something like that. And I blame the media. The media has been out there for decades, like stirring up the culture wars and identity politics issues, and especially like attacking migrants and things like that. And so this is part of people's psyche. And so like, yes, okay, politicians, they are like, let's say, downstream from the public, but the public is downstream from, like, in terms of their opinions, is downstream from the media, and the media are complicit in forming these crap people. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't blame the general population, okay, for this. Like, they are like the means in which someone like a populist leader will get elected. They are the means to which, but like, they usually aren't making these decisions in a vacuum. They go to sources to get their opinions, because like they don't have time to form their own political opinions because of the rat race of the capitalist system. They are working, and like more and more as we get into late stage capitalism and like living standards start to drop and all that sort of stuff, they are surviving. They're not just living in a capitalist system, they're surviving. And the more you have to survive, the less you are able to get politically involved in things. Look, I will say that, just reading from the chat, look, I will say that Adam Smith would hate the public nowadays. All self-interest, no other interests. Yeah, like, because like you need multiple kind of types of interests in order to make a society go round, not just looking at yourself. Everyone should read A Theory on Moral Sentiments, again by Smith. He didn't just read or write. Sorry, he didn't just write, yes. Wealth of Nations, yes. They kind of like, they have to be read in conjunction, I believe. So anyway, let's go back to Robespierre. And we all know what happened to Robespierre as well, eh? They got him in the end. And they fed him to the guillotine.
He was able to appeal to young men who disliked the current world they live in. This feeling was, of course, reinforced by...
We've already spoken about young men here. Howdy, good to see you. And we've already spoken about this young men phenomenon. Like, there was a sentiment earlier, Shazam and I were going back and forth a lot about this. And, like, everyone seems to be putting a lot of weight to this young men demographic that voted for Trump. They were called out in the droves and stuff like that. Like, I really think that the Joe Rogan experience had a lot to do with that. Like, once he endorsed Trump kind of thing, like those people, if they weren't coming out already, would have just been given that extra, I don't know, energy to stand in line and make their vote count towards Trump. But like, everyone seems to be kind of blaming, you know, kind of this Trump victory on this element, like it was the only factor almost.
Social media and commentators online as well. They fed this. They felt this resentment towards the world they occupy at the moment. They feel, and of course feelings are not the same as reality, but they feel that everything and everyone is against them. And then in steps somebody like Donald Trump who'll say, I'm on your side. Now, you're going to hear from political commentators and maybe even the Democrats themselves, while the Democrats are licking their wounds, how they should have maybe pandered more to racists and bigots in different states around the US, or they should have pandered to some certain demographics or certain groups. No, they would not have won if they did that. The problem, once again, is the public.
The problem is the public. It's a funny theme to run for your conversation, for your analysis. That the problem is the public. But why not? Eh? Why not? It's always the people, isn't it? Eh? It's never the politicians themselves. It's never the actual system itself. Like you would know from being on this channel, the problem is capitalism. People are a product of the capitalist social relations and the productive forces and stuff like that. Not to say that it's not a feedback loop. I'm not saying that people don't influence the mode of production, but like capitalism is the system that has produced this environment. If this guy is going to go to the level of saying that, it's angry young men that have turned this election, well, what the hell is making the young men angry? And it's not just the media talking about migrants. It is the economic reality of the capitalist mode of production. As it compounds and as it continues to kind of devolve into this system where there is a falling rate of profit, where labor itself becomes diminished in terms of its value, and like it becomes more productive, but like there's less of its impact going around, and like capital is concentrated into more and more hands, people become increasingly frustrated and disillusioned with the system. It's not just the media and it's not just people.
The public have switched off their brains and decided we're going to vote for somebody who speaks my language, who gives me easy answers to difficult questions. People back in 2016 voted for Donald Trump because they believed he was going to shake things up. But this time round, it seems he's won the popular vote. His support has gone up since 2016.
That's a good
not
fact.
down. This is not, let's give him a try. Let's experiment.
I don't know if that is representative of the popular vote at large or representative just of who he was able to mobilize to vote, because like in that system you don't have mandatory voting. So like maybe last time he lost the popular vote by overall number of votes but still got in because of the way that their system works. He got the electoral college votes, but this time he won the popular vote in terms of how many people showed up to vote on election day. So if more people, like he's already said this quote, this guy already, that like elections are not about who wins, but who lost. So like it's a vote against someone as opposed to a vote for someone. He's already kind of explained that phenomenon. So if like people turned out to vote because they didn't want Harris or something like that, like they were just more mobilized to vote in that scenario. Maybe overall opinion in a population that isn't like forced to vote in every election, maybe overall opinion might be more towards the Democratic side. But like it would appear that people that voted for Trump were more mobilized in this election when compared to the last time that he got into office. Micro-targeting has happened before. Huge amount of disaffected youth, middle-aged dudes like me too. Is that Rogan has huge influence. Like I've said a number of times now, I think that this election, in terms of like getting that kind of like, I don't know, popular backing, was the election between Taylor Swift and Joe Rogan in terms of who's got more political influence. And like it looks like Rogan won. Rogan's more influential in terms of politics anyway. It's more influential than Taylor Swift. That's the pop. There's your popular vote, Robespierre. Remember that, mate. Remember that. Going on X is an absolute cesspool for Trump support as well as Elon coming up, even if you don't follow him. Has anyone seen like Elon's reaction to this? Like I've seen other people kind of like, speak after Trump's election. Has anyone got anything that I can refer to in terms of Elon? I'd like to see what Elon has to say, because like Elon is supposed to be part of like the team now, Team America, is going to come in there and solve problems with government inefficiencies.
This is people who liked what they saw from 2016 to 2020 and want more of it. This is a major problem. This is not just a problem for the Democrats. This is a problem for society. Now, there are some silver linings which I'll get to in just a moment. But what does all this mean for the US economy? Trump was talking about imposing tariffs on all imports. Now, this, of course, would drive up inflation, which be, of course, a problem for the US. And he will not be a friend of the UK, you know, irrespective of what Nigel Farage or Reform UK have to say. This will be damaging to British exports. Now, what does it also mean for Ukraine? Well, Trump has said that he would have peace straight away. He would do a deal with Vladimir Putin. Now, it wouldn't be Trump doing the deal. It would be the Ukrainian government doing the deal. But what is Trump talking about? It's likely that he would cut funding for Ukraine and he would force some sort of settlement. Now, would that be in the interest of Ukrainians? Of course not. It would be in the interest of Donald Trump. Everything Trump does is in the interest of Donald Trump. Maybe the voters will eventually find that out, you know, in 4 years' time. What does it mean for Gaza? You know, we've heard a lot of rhetoric about why...
That's a good question. Like, what does a Trump victory mean for what's happening in Palestine? Now, like, correct me if I'm wrong, though, but, like, it wasn't like the Democrats were going to, you know, stop supporting Israel. So, like, you know, someone in the chat, please tell me if, like, the Democrats had said that they were going to support a two-state solution and ask for Israel to stop doing this nonsense. But, like, from what I understand, it's, like, on both sides of the political spectrum. Not really a political spectrum, just each party was going to continue to do nothing about what's happening over there.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were a disaster, and that's true. But Trump is not going to be any better, potentially much worse, because he's going to double down on support for Netanyahu. He's going to say to Netanyahu, do whatever the hell you want. You have my back.
He is doing whatever the hell he wants.
I'm not going to send troops, I'm not going to send aircraft or whatever, but I'm not going to stand in your way. Now, many people will see very little difference there, but if the goal was to give Joe Biden and Kamala Harris a bloody nose by voting for Donald Trump, I don't see how that's going to work out to the benefit of the people of Gaza or Lebanon. Now, I said there may be a silver lining here. And I guess
this will be good. Anyone want to predict what the silver lining is? Hey, from a Trump victory? Anyone? In the chat. Tell us your thoughts.
Get back to the point of elections are referendums on the incumbent. So, at the time of the recording of this video, it seemed Trump may be also winning the House of Representatives and the Senate. So this would mean he would have total control over everything. He would be able to do as he wishes. This would mean that...
Class consciousness? Yeah, I guess. It'll force people to organize? Yeah, I guess that is a silver lining. Like, more and more capitalism kind of degrades and gets just, like, more and more unrealistic for average people to kind of survive in this system. And, like, how the contradictions of the system just hold us all back as a species together. I think, you know, we're definitely going to become kind of more conscious of the problems. And hopefully that leads to organization, yes. But yeah, you know, Trump might force people to become kind of more organized. They did say that last time. What it did was it kind of polarized, I think, them a little bit more. Like, the people that were anti-Trump became a lot more organized, but then the people that, like, supported him became a lot more empowered because they knew that God was on their side.
If the economy does not improve, if ordinary people don't see a material improvement in their lives, they're going to kick him out in 4 years' time. Maybe they're going to kick out his party in 2 years' time. See, this is a problem, and I've mentioned it before, for the far right. They prefer to be sitting on the sidelines talking about how they would do things better, because as soon as they get into power, they have to take responsibility for their actions. Because Trump will not be able to say, well, it's the media's fault or it's immigrants' fault or whatever, because he will be in total control. It's easier for him to sit on the outside saying the incumbent is doing everything wrong. then when he gets into power and he's not able to fix the problems that he said he would fix. He has said that he would fix everything. For example, he has control over the domestic economy, but he has limited control over the global economy. So his ability to improve the quality of life of ordinary people in the US will be limited. Not completely, but it will.
I think this is a good point. It's a fair point. Like, if he's got total control, like he has the House of Reps, and he has the Senate, then he's able to really just ram through any of the things that he's been talking about. Like, any of the things that he really wants to do. So, like, if he does not deliver, then, like, people will be definitely, one, questioning, like, you know, what the hell he's doing. And two, then, like, he doesn't actually have any excuses. I think that's a really good point. Like, previously, I've heard a lot of kind of supporters of Trump, or at least just conservatives in America generally, just be like, oh, yeah, well, you can't really blame Trump because, like, COVID happened. And so it's just like, he was doing well until COVID happened. And, like, you can't blame anyone for COVID. It was a really hard time. But, like, there's not going to be any of that, I guess, any of those excuses anymore. Like, you can't turn around and say, oh, I didn't have the resources for that, or I didn't have the ability because someone kept blocking me from doing what I really needed to do. Like, they don't have that. So actually, twofold then, that means if he does, you know, improvements and things like that, it's really going to shut up and silence people that kind of are his haters, or haters of people that are in his team, like people that hate Elon Musk and people that hate Tulsi and things like that. That'll be interesting. That's an interesting point. He does have an opportunity to kind of really prove whether he is worth his salt to that angry demographic of white, disillusioned young males out there in America.
Will be limited. So any political strategy over the next 4 years from the Democrats must be to point the finger at Trump and say he's not improving things. Now, the economy was improving over the last 4 years, but the people, the ordinary people on the street, your average person, didn't feel that. So the question the Democrats have to be asking Trump and his administration and the public is, are things getting better over the next 4 years? Ironically, the kryptonite to the far right is power, because power comes with responsibility. And if you're in total control, you can't blame anyone else. You can try, but if the situation does not improve for ordinary people, they will kick you out. So Trump may be in charge now. He may be in charge of the Congress, he may be in charge of the Senate, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And if he's not able to improve the quality of life of ordinary people, then they will remove him, unless he ends elections or something like that. Okay, this video went on for a little bit longer than I expected, but I think it's a dark period, of course, for the American public at the moment.
Fair enough. Like, you know, it's he's got some good points at the end there. I'm not too happy, or not too in agreement, though, with his earlier points that, like, you just blame the people for this. Like, public perception is heavily shaped by media, propaganda, let's just say, and, like, all of the stuff that happens online now in echo chambers and all that sort of stuff. So I don't really blame the people for this as such. Like, especially in a two-party system like the Americans have. Like, really, what the hell else do they have to choose from here? Like, you know, lackluster Harris and, like, outrageous Trump. Like, you know, what else do they got to choose from? It's not easy, man. It's not easy. All right, we're gonna take a quick 10-minute break. So, like, I'll see you in 10 minutes time. Don't go anywhere unless you have to. And yeah, if you've got any suggestions about what you want us to cover next, please leave me something in the chat, and I will get onto it when we return. I will see you 10 minutes time. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me through the break. I want to take like a change of direction now, and I really want to look at, I don't know, like something that's more, related to the channel, and let's look at some like kind of capitalist implications of what Trump's victory means. So we're going to take it away from like just listening to people's opinions on stuff, and let's see kind of what this means for China, because like massive implications there in terms of Trump's win and China. That didn't work. Why didn't this link work? Let's have a look. Let me try that again. That was embarrassing. Alright, let's go again. This has come from a long-time collaborator, Boris. And he's quite the political philosopher. So he suggested to me that I have a look into like kind of, what the implications of Trump's election is going to have on like the world economy, and specifically China, right? The biggest economic competitor for the US. Why not see like kind of what Trump's election will actually mean? Because he's made like a lot of threats in terms of how he's going to relate to the world, specifically on an economic sense. So this is from Bloomberg, and so like they've kind of done an analysis as to what's going to happen in terms of relations between China, and Trump under the tariffs. So let's see what they have to say for themselves. Old Bloomberg. I've got the captions on for you if you need it.
Let's bring in Bonnie Glaser, Managing Director at the German Marshall Fund of the United States Indo-Pacific Program. Bonnie, it's great to have you just a day after this historic election. And I'm just wondering, we've heard from what President-elect Trump has vowed during his campaign, which was blanket tariffs on China, the U.S. questioning their commitments to Taiwan, to even allies like with South Korea and Japan. How should Asia and the rest of the world brace for a Trump return?
Well, I think it's fair to say that U.S. allies are anxious everywhere, certainly in Asia. With the growth of Chinese power, most countries in the region, I think, want a stronger, not weaker, United States engagement and leadership in the region. And
what does that mean?
Of course, we have heard some interest expressed in some circles in South Korea in acquiring nuclear weapons. Japan has been increasing its defense capability as they see a more complicated security environment, but they're very invested in the alliance with the U.S. Australia has put more and more eggs in the U.S. basket, and the Philippines, also a treaty ally.
We just got a shout out. All right. There are Australians in the audience. Let yourself be known in the chat. But yes, we have been putting all of our eggs in one basket, but that's what we do. Like whenever there's a superpower, whether they be the British or the Americans, we always come to heel and do whatever it is that they want us to do. And like, we don't ask questions. We're quite the good dog, the old Australians.
Ally of the United States might not be willing to stand up to Chinese aggression against it in the South China Sea if they don't have confidence that the U.S. is standing with them and would fulfill commitments in the event that China uses force. So in other words, there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think Indo-Pacific countries will be watching very closely to see how Trump 2.0 is going to approach the region and U.S. allies everywhere.
Fair enough.
Bonnie, David here. Maybe just to follow up on that, the extent.
Not really very insightful though, was it? It's just like, yes, everyone's on edge, and everyone will be looking to see if Trump does anything differently this time. Like, old Bonnie. I could have told you that for free. I'm sure she got paid nicely to be a part of this interview.
Of military support in the event we get to that conversation, which hopefully we don't. What about the aspect that, and we heard this back in 2016, is that allies will simply just need to pay more and foot more of that bill as it pertains to U.S. defense?
Well, that that's certainly a given. The Trump administration will want countries to pay more for their own defense. And defense spending has increased during the Biden administration in many places in the world, certainly, of course, in Europe after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We have a lot of countries in NATO now that are spending more than at least 2% of GDP. But we're seeing that in Asia too. Japan's defense spending has risen, and Taiwan's defense spending is rising too. It's now at about 2.6% of GDP. But Trump will demand more. I have no doubt that he will and his administration will expect countries to do more for their own defense.
How do you think China is going to respond? I mean, if there's a threat of tariffs here, do you think, people talk about there's a difference between the candidate Trump and what he will be as President Trump. Do you subscribe to that view that maybe this was all sort of just campaign rhetoric and that maybe he might have a softer approach on China when it comes to tariffs and use it more just as a bargaining tool?
I think that China is prepared for intensifying strategic competition. In the U.S.-China relationship.
I was on mute. Damn it.
They probably.
All I said was basically like he's done that in the past already. He's put tariffs on them. He's definitely put tariffs on them in the past, and like he loves China. There's some really good remixes of him saying China, 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 China over and over again. So like I don't think he's going to be soft with them, which is what they're talking about. Yeah. What does the world look like in 2028? Can we freeze that conversation for another live stream? Because like the U.S. election has, like, in my mind, is like a second tier issue in relation to some of the technological changes that are coming. Like, yeah, like with BRICS, but especially the EU1, Project Enbridge, and like artificial intelligence. If you have been following us at all, like in what we've been talking about on the podcast, so the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast with all of the AI debate that we've been having, like 2028 to me looks like a new world in terms of potential technological change. So like, this US election is not going to mean much soon, if the predictions about technological change is true. But like, time will tell. But like, what does it look like in a Trump world? I think very much more isolated. Like, I really do think that if he's going to be increasing tariffs on everyone, expecting that people look after themselves, and like the globalized world as we know it is coming to an end, it's going to be a world where people are struggling a lot more and are looking to kind of their regional allies or their regional kind of relations in the world. So like breaking up the world into like major regions and stuff like that. They're going to be looking more to their localities in order to support themselves economically, and through through trade and all that sort of stuff. So if the Americans shrink back in terms of their military reach, let's say, across the globe, like it'll be a different world in terms of how shipping is done. And like shipping is the backbone of the global economy. Like you cannot move products around the world and have like a just-in-time economic system. You can't have this form of imperial capitalism without global shipping. And if America walks away from protecting the sea lanes of the world, like the economy as we know it, like the world economy as we know it, would potentially be unrecognizable in like 5 to 10 years time. So there's just some throwaway thoughts for you there, Shazam. I hope that's the type of stuff that you were talking about. I'm going to continue to listen to this, but I think I might try and change to another link where Trump's actually involved with them speaking about what he's going to do with China. So I'll try and find that.
Fully prepared for Trump to impose higher tariffs on China. We know he's talked about tariffs as high as 60%. Trump could seek to negotiate another trade deal with China, or he might conclude that it's a waste of time since Beijing didn't purchase the American products that it pledged to buy in the phase one deal they signed when he was president. Instead, Trump could pursue a policy of decoupling rather than de-risking from China. I think the Chinese are fully prepared for the new team to more tightly enforce export controls on advanced semiconductors, for example. So I think the Chinese will wait to see what he does initially and who goes into his administration. At the same time, I think that we can assume that the Chinese will reach out to some U.S. businessmen that they trust, who they think can whisper in Trump's ear and maybe influence his policies.
Yeah, and I wonder who that could be, Bonnie. Well, you mentioned the Chinese might be waiting for what the president-elect might do initially. What immediately comes to mind when you said that was our reporting suggests that the Taiwanese president is considering putting a call in to Donald Trump. Well, two questions for you. Do you think Donald Trump should take that call, and do you think he will take that call?
Well, we know that Donald Trump had a call with the former president of Taiwan, Tsai Ing-wen, when he was elected last time. And according to interviews and
Why wouldn't he? Oh, I'm sorry. I keep on putting it on mute. Why wouldn't he want to speak to Taiwan? Honestly, why wouldn't he? It doesn't make sense that he wouldn't want to speak to Taiwan. Strategically, they are so significant from a geopolitical perspective in terms of keeping wraps on China. Yes, I've got it. 4AS. LOL. Thank you. Yeah, why the hell wouldn't he? And Taiwan is really important from a number of perspectives, from a global economic perspective. If you put your global capitalist hat on, what does Taiwan add to the global supply chain? Microchips. Apparently they're really, really important on not just microchip production. China does that, generally, but they do high-end microchip production. So they are massive, in an information age, an age of information technology. The Taiwanese are very important for the world economy, not just from a military strategic standpoint, but from an overall capitalism standpoint. They are really, really important. And so I don't think you will see a situation where Trump ignores Taiwan for that strategic importance on both levels, but over the last I think 5 years or something like that, the Americans have been doubling down on their own industry when it comes to high-end microchip production. They are without a doubt America, and they've already put the steps in the wheels in motion for this. They are trying to separate themselves from reliance on the world economy. So if you just look at it from a capitalist perspective, so you have a look at how these societies reproduce themselves within the capitalist system, within the mode of production, Americans have already been putting the steps in to try and reclaim their independence from global supply chains, especially with high-end important electronic goods, which is let's be honest, in the modern world is very, very important. You can't live without electronics these days. So my God, they are showing themselves, the Americans that is, that they are wanting to, economically, in concrete reality, not political rhetoric and discourse, they are showing that they are going to stand alone from a economic perspective. So let's see if I can get like an actual conversation with Trump, like before the election, like might I add, but like, you know, still potentially valid, because like at least it gives you an indication of what, you know, Trump was thinking from the get-go. So yeah, just another shameless plug. If you're enjoying this, please give me a like, leave us a comment, subscribe for more. And there's a link to Patreon in the description. So please go over there and join us. Become part of the community. I'm trying to build a community over there. It's a different communication channel completely on Patreon. So like I want to build that communication channel over there. So come and join and be a part of the community. You can join for free. Like if you can financially support, please, by all means. I'm not going to stop you, but at least go over and join us and become a member for free. Join the movement. So this is Donald Trump's interview with Bloomberg, and this talks about his economic plans and like what. So let's now we know he's won. Let's go back, because we're going to see the proof in the pudding very soon. Let's go back and see what his plans were actually, economically speaking, 3 weeks before the election. And then we can, like, as the weeks go on and the years roll by, we can actually see if the proof was in the pudding.
Thank you very much. Standing ovation.
The Economic Club of Chicago.
President Trump, thank you for doing this, as we said. And you heard the reception there. The business people of Chicago, like everywhere else, they like
the neoliberal elite.
The things you want to do in terms of tax cuts and some of the spending proposals, but like many people, what they're often worried about is the cost. And the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which is a bipartisan outfit, put out some predictions the other day. If you add up all the promises you've made, and your plans would add $7.5 trillion to the debt. That's more than twice the total for Vice President Harris. You're on course to push up debt up to 150% of GDP. This is a very business-like audience.
Yeah.
Why should they trust you with that?
Because we're about growth. She's got no growth whatsoever, and we're all about growth. We're going to bring...
She's got no growth. You know what? It's interesting because, like, if you look at this from a capitalist perspective, now the only way that capitalist mode of production works, right, with compound growth. Like, why is GDP measured? Why do they always talk about like needing a minimum percentage of like 3% growth a year? Because in order for capitalism to function, right, for you to be able to put money in at one start of the process and to pull more money out at the end, if everybody wants to do that, have more money at the end than what they started with, you need compound economic growth. And so, like, you know, he's a businessman. So, like, if he's picking on growth, let's go for it. Let's see what he's got to say.
Companies back to our country. You look at, even today, as I was driving over, I see these empty, old, beautiful, like steel mills and factories that are empty and falling down. Some have been converted to senior citizens' homes, but that's not going to do the trick. And we're going to bring the companies back. We're going to lower taxes still further for companies that are going to make their product in the USA. We're going to protect those companies with strong tariffs, because I'm a believer in tariffs. I'm not sure that you are. I don't think you are, but I congratulate you on your career. But to me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff. And it's my favorite word. It needs a public relations...
The most beautiful word. Like, wow. At least he's entertaining. So tariffs. Tariffs. This is... Okay, from, again, you have to look at this from a capitalist analysis perspective. Like, they are trying to claw back all that has been degraded from the neoliberal era. So, like, you have to think of neoliberalism as this rise of financial capital, the dominance of capital in the monetary form. So, like, Marx describes money as, like, because in capitalism, money is also a commodity. It's not just a medium medium of exchange. It's not just an exchange value. It is a commodity in itself. Hence the hyper-financialization we have in the world market, right? But like, money is the god of all commodities. And so like, as America and like a lot of like Western or advanced nations turn towards wholly financialization, like look at what's happened in the UK, for example. They have completely destroyed their home industry, their manufacturing base, which under a capitalist analysis gives you all of the value in society. Like the value production is at the coalface. It is the service industry that is actually producing values for other people. It is the manufacturing and industrial sector that is actually producing value. It is the construction sector that is producing value. When the financialization happened as a result of the neoliberalization of the world, the manufacturing sector bottomed out in a lot of advanced capital nations. And if you're relying on other people like China or Bangladesh or Mexico or something like that to produce your value for you, whether you like it or not, you are beholden to them to produce real value, not the speculative value that comes from the monetary form through financialization. And so tariffs force on both sides of the fence, for it forces other countries to rethink their structure, the economy structure on their side, about how they're supplying non-stop to like the Americans or the advanced companies, and the advanced companies themselves to start to patch up holes where they're not producing any real value in the system. This is just a Marxian analysis of the global economy.
Firm. Just to help it, but to me it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary.
Tariffs, do you think that will bring in the revenues? To use another bipartisan group,
yeah,
Peterson Institute, they say they only bring in $200 billion. That is that's barely the cost of 2 of your promises.
Yeah, but that's like, for what company are you talking about, okay? Look, I've brought in with tariffs, and I was just getting...
Did you see that neoliberal rhetoric, like straight away? It's just like, yeah, but like, who's the tariffs going to help? What business kind of thing? Like, what sector of the economy? Like, don't you get it? It's not about business decisions. This is not about helping one corporation make more profits or something like that. Yeah, there's going to be costs up front, but like, this is about like steel manning your economy, making sure it will be able to survive in a world that, like we talked about earlier today, is going to be bipolar. Multipolar, not unipolar anymore. It's not just going to be the US dollar and the American hegemony, and they can just take resources from anywhere they want in the planet at any whim that they feel like. No, they're going to have to be able to compete soon in a global economy. They've never had to do that, the Americans. Since World War II, they have never had to compete economically on the world stage. They have to be able to do that. And if you're a business person up front, like this economic club of Chicago, all you're worried about is next year's profits and stuff like that. Extremely short-sighted stuff, like from a capitalist perspective. Like, let's be honest, and they're supposed to be capitalists.
Started, then COVID came, and we had because I tell you what, I did a very good job in COVID. Nobody knew what the hell it was. I call it the China virus because I like being a little more accurate. But when that came, we got hundreds of billions of dollars just from China alone, and I hadn't even started yet. But tariffs are two things, if you look at it. Number one is for protection of the companies that we have here and the new companies that will move in, because we're going to have thousands of companies coming into this country. We're going to grow it like it's never grown before, and we're going to protect them when they come in, because we're not going to have somebody undercut them. And I could give you an example of this if you want. Would you like me to? Because it just
happened. Give me a quick example, then I will come back.
I just found out about it. So I've been talking about for the last year about Detroit and how horribly it has been. You know, it's just horrible, because we've been talking about Detroit's coming back for 40 years, and it's never come back. And it's very dependent on the car industry. Well, they've lost 60% of the business over a long period of time. And what happened is I found out a friend of mine builds auto plants. That's all he does. He builds auto plants. That's what he's good at. He doesn't want to build an apartment. All he wants to build is, and he builds the biggest in the world. And for the last year and a half, if anybody's heard me speak, I was talking about Mexico as a tremendous challenge for us right now, tremendous. China is building massive auto plants in Mexico. And they're going to build them, and they're going to take those cars and sell them into the United States. They're very near the border. And they're going to have all the advantages and none of the disadvantages. And that's going to be the end of Michigan. It's going to be the end of, frankly, South Carolina. Going to be the end of everything. So I've been talking about this, and I said to him about 9 months ago, I said, you know what? I want you to do me a favor, John. His name is John. I don't want to give his last name because he might not like it. But I said, I want to see an auto plant. I want to go and see one of these. You know, you press a button and everything works, right? I want to see one of the big ones. He said, all right, good. I said, where do we go? I'd like to go to Michigan. I'd like to go to someplace in the United States. He said, no, we can't do that. Why? We're not building anything big in the United States. That's not where we don't build the big ones here. I said, where are you building the biggest ones? He said, in Mexico. We're building giant plants, the biggest plants anywhere in the world. In Mexico, I said, so you mean they're going to make cars cheaply? They have advantages over labor and other things?
In Mexico, I said. I love the way Americans talk like that. I said to the guy, right? I said to him. In Mexico, no, unbelievable.
And they're going to sell them into the United States, and they're going to put Michigan out of business. Is that what? I don't know anything about that. All I do is build the plants. If you want to see a plant, we'll go to Mexico. I'll show you the biggest plant in the world. That was 9 months ago. I saw him, and I talked about it all the time because I think it's a serious threat to our country, because not only autos, but other things. So then I see him. 2 days ago, I was talking at another club, very nice club, and like this, except, I don't know, I think you people are probably even wealthier, okay? This was in Detroit, okay, which was appropriate. And I was showing them all sorts of charts about how their car, you know, it's just gone down. It's like terrible. And I saw.
Did you hear them all laugh? Ha 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 ha. We are wealthier. Ah, makes me sick. Makes me sick.
I saw him, and I said, oh, how are you doing? How have you been? I said, could I ask you, how are those plants that you mentioned, those giant plants that you're building in Mexico, how is that coming along? Have you finished them? No, sir. They abandoned the project when they heard you're running. They abandoned the project when they saw that you were winning and doing well.
We've got another 2 billion people.
Interesting. Very interesting, eh? Well, like, this is the point of tariffs. What I was talking about before is about resilience. Like, it doesn't just mean that you're going to be like making some money upfront in the existing industries. It forces your country to fill in gaps in your own supply chains. It starts up businesses elsewhere. And like it's funny because like a lot of people think that, you know, the only people that like to use Marxist analysis of things are like anti-capitalists and commies and stuff like that. No. If you're a good capitalist and you want to know how to be better at capitalism, then you're a good Marxist. And like, there's a lot of signs here that like whoever's advising this guy about what he should be doing to make America kind of resilient is like very kind of Marxist ideas of how global capitalism works. Like what Lenin would describe as like actual like imperialism from the Leninist perspective. Like this is, they're taking it back to the point where the massive cartels and monopolies reside within the countries themselves. Whether that's the answer or not, like that's a completely different question. But you can analyze this definitely from a Marxist perspective. Definitely.
Because I told them when they saw that, when they heard you're running, they abandoned the project when they saw that you were winning and doing well. I said, well, all the same. Because I told them, and I said it publicly, they're not going to sell one car into the United States. I said, if I run this country, if I'm going to be president of this country, I'm going to put a 100, 200, 2,000% tariff. They're not going to sell one car into the United States. because we're not going to destroy our country by, because I know you're an anti-tariff guy, but I'm the exact opposite. If I had, there was no other way I could have stopped them other than, what am I going to do, negotiate with Mexico or China? You're not going to get anything from that. I said I'm going to put a 100, 200, or 300. I'm going to put the highest tariff in history, meaning I'm going to stop them from ever selling a car into the United States. So I just see the guy by accident. I see him. He says, sir, they've abandoned it. And by the way, they built foundations. They were really rocking. They were going to do it. They thought that I was going to win, or maybe they're just holding off. I tell you this, if I don't win, those factories are going to wipe out this country. They're the biggest factories ever built for cars. They're going to wipe out our country. If she wins, and she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. If she wins, she's not going to be thinking about, I couldn't, every speech I made having to do with cars, but every speech I made having to do with tariffs, I'd mentioned that our country is being threatened by Mexico. Now, all of those things, beyond even the car companies, all of those things are now dead. They're dead. I asked them, will they start? Probably not. They're dead as a doornail. If she gets in, it'll start up again.
President Trump, I let you give your example.
No,
you talked a lot about tariffs. You look at the American economy, 40 million jobs rely on trade. It counts for 27% of GDP.
Okay.
If you cut that off, that's also going to have an effect on many, many business people here.
Yeah.
Tariffs also have another side. Isn't that something that you have to acknowledge?
No.
You could be plunging America into the biggest trade war since Smoot-Hawley.
But there are no tariffs.
You're going to stop. There are tariffs already at the moment.
There are no tariffs. All you have to do is build your plant in the United States, and you don't have any tariffs.
But people, a lot of places like this, they.
See, that is a funny point. God, I can't believe I'm. It's a funny point, okay? Because like, what I'm going on about here is resilience, and like, this is the way that the value system works in a capitalist system. The value Jerry Poppins brought up before about capital follows the path of least resistance. And so like if the resistance comes at a tariff wall, then the money dips backwards and starts filtering through the economy again. And then the plant has to like take up it has to take up and set up shop within the national boundaries. And this is what neoliberalism did. He is advocating for economic localism. But like what I'm trying to say for IS, though, in a roundabout way, and without seeming like I'm completely siding with Trump on this one, it's really freaking me out, man. But like, is that like what he is espousing here is the anti-neoliberalism that like people like anti-capitalists, communists, socialists, leftists generally have been calling for like decades now. He is just like, he's pulling down some of the main kind of, I guess, factors in the neoliberalization of the world. He's starting to regress away from that. I'm not saying that that is the answer to the world's problems, regression. It's usually not. But this is very anti-neoliberal stuff here. Like you've got like this guy on the right who is like the representative of corporate America, who's just worried about next year's profits. And like you've got Trump who's just like, I don't care. I just want to make him all American again. Like, and he just cares about nationalism. So you've got hardcore representative of the global capitalist system versus a nationalist, basically. And like in this day and age, it would seem that nationalism is anti-neoliberalism. It's just weird how certain ideologies start to line up with one another. Like lefties from 5, 10 years ago, 20 years ago would have kind of definitely believed in this anti-neoliberal rhetoric. They would have been like, no, we shouldn't be offshoring all of these manufacturing jobs. We should maintain them within America. We need to keep our working class safe. Frame that quote, MysterE. I will. Farias. It'll be in my autobiography.
There are a lot of jobs that rely on foreigners coming here. You're going to basically stop trade with China. You're talking about 60% trade on that, 60% tariffs on that. You're talking, as you said, 100, 200% on things you don't really like. You're also talking about 10, 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just
No, let me finish.
Listen, it must be hard for you to spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have.
Such a wanker.
I'll go a step further. If you don't do this, this country has no
40
chance.
million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here, and I'll keep them. John Deere will stay here. And I'll tell John Deere, if you do build outside of the United States, you can if you want. For instance, India is a very tough country. It's not only China. You know, China is...
This is really weird. Like, listening to this is really, really weird. Like, if he was, like, kind of the head of a union or something like that. I don't know. Like, some type of labor organization body or something like that. Like, you would accept the fact that, like, this person is just fighting for, like, the working class or something like that. This is a big part of what that Robespierre channel that we were looking at before was talking about, and like Jonathan Pye was talking about, like when we looked at that too. Like Shazam, like we were touching on this earlier. Why the hell is it that people are attracted to him in the first place? Like, he is actually speaking about, like, things that matter to working class people. He's talking about, like, having the economic basis within your own borders in order to like support local manufacturing. Again, from a Marxist perspective, like, the value in a system, the basis for the entire profit system comes from value production and skimming off the surplus value on top of that. And like, you don't get much more like direct surplus value for manufacture and direct services. So like, you know, taking this stuff back within the boundaries of your nation, that is, like I said before, anti-neoliberal stuff. Well, he's justifying it, Shazam, he's justifying it by saying that, like, basically, in the longer term, if we have insane tariffs put on anyone trying to import goods that we should be making in our country, kind of thing, we will have a situation where the local economy will have to pick up to fill in the gaps in that hole. So if they're blocking electric vehicles from coming into the country, then the Americans are going to have to produce their own electric vehicles, and companies will move back to America. So any company that's like General Motors or something like that, that has plant in China, or like he was talking about that have like plant in Mexico, if they want to avoid the tariffs and still sell to the American population, they literally have to start coming home and setting up their industrial plant within the US borders. So that's how he's justifying this. Now, many of the people that are attacking this idea are coming at it from the perspective that, hey, up front there's going to be massive costs to this, and there will be. Like, there's nothing wrong about that. That is actually right. He is not addressing at all what this guy is saying in terms of, like, we're going to lose jobs up front, so people are going to lose out because of this. Businesses are going to die because of the tariffs and stuff like that. The economy is going to suffer, but like, it's suffering in the short term. But the problem with this, if you look at like how the global economy works, and how reliant we've all become on each other globally, is that like, you don't just get this in one term of presidency. Okay, the amount of investment and capital intensity that goes into restructuring your entire society to become, like, manufacturing, in a manufacturing sense, productive again, like, that'll take decades. It might be done faster, maybe half the time, maybe a decade, but it's not going to be in the time that he's president. It'll be, wouldn't companies just import loads of stuff? Wouldn't companies that import a load of stuff just leave America then? Well, like, yeah, but like if they're American or something like that, they'll actually have to go and find homes somewhere else and join the economy outside of America somewhere else. But like if they want to stay in America, if they want to continue to feed off the American market, if they continue to want to be Americans themselves, they're going to have to work within the system. So yes, absolutely, they could just pick up and leave America. But like if Australia did that, right, you'd have all these companies disappearing. If like most of the European countries did that, you'd have all these companies just being like, well, screw you, we're not doing this. But like the Americans have the advantage of being the number one economy in the world. They are number one superpower when it comes to being the like militaristically, economically, whatever you want to say it. Like they have that backing. So like the question will be, the companies that like would want to shut up shop in America and go somewhere else, where are they going to go? China? China's very protectionist. They're not just going to let all these American businesses in and just open up solely to trade within China. Like, where will they go? Brazil, Russia. They can't go. Like, it's limited their options of going elsewhere, and that's the advantage that the Americans have, and potentially will have for a very, very long time. Like I don't see a situation where the Americans lose that edge of just being an absolute economic powerhouse. They have a massive landmass from the east coast to the west coast. They have demographics in their favor. They are one of the only populations in the world that is not aging. Like it is still got a relatively young population. It is also full of resources and can feed itself. It literally has like the whole of Middle America, like kind of thing, is basically like its food bowl. And like it has, like I said, lots of resources to call upon. Like thanks to the advancements in like the way that they frack for oil and stuff like that, they don't even have to rely on the Arab states anymore. For so long, their foreign policy was just about keeping the Arabs in check so they could make sure that like oil was supplied to themselves and the rest of the world. But like they don't even have to do that with the technology that they have now. They've got enough oil reserves within their own like kind of limits and proximity to their landmass that they can really be self-sufficient. And like they've always got that advantage, the Americans, and like he's playing on that.
Is I would say probably the toughest, but there are a lot of tough. You know what's very tough? European Union, our beautiful European countries, wonderful, wonderful. If you add them up, they're almost the size of us. They treat us so badly. We have a deficit. I said to Angela Merkel when she was there, she's not there anymore, I wonder why, but when she was there, I said, Angela, how many Chevrolets do we have in Berlin? Why, Donald, you have none. I said, that's right. How many Fords do we have in Frankfurt? I don't know, none. I said, that's right. You know how many cars we have? Mercedes-Benz, BMW, all of the Volkswagen, millions and millions of cars. And then I said farm products. They don't want our farm. They don't want anything from us. We have deficits that are crazy. And we're not going to have them anymore. We're going to put tariffs on them, and they're going to do. And you know what they can do? The Mercedes-Benz will start building in the United States. And they have a little bit. But you know what they really are? Assembly, like in South Carolina. But they build everything in Germany, and then they assemble it here. They get away with murder because they say, oh, yes, we're building cars. They don't build cars. They take them out of a box and they assemble them. We could have our child do it.
Can we come back? Let's come back to the Europeans in a second. What about consumers? People out there.
They're going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
Critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope.
Because
the countries
if you have America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports, you're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
No. What's going to happen?
That is just simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figure it. I was always very good at mathematics.
Yes.
Let me tell you, you're saying $3 trillion.
That's $3 trillion worth of imports.
And they don't have to pay. And
aren't you just happy that you get to see this more often now? Out of everything, the only silver lining really is that he is, unlike most other politicians, at least he's entertaining, far out. At least there's that. At least he'll make you laugh every now and again.
The higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the country.
The higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to have to pay in shops.
Ready?
It's true.
The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many, many.
No,
as you know, that will take many
quickly.
years.
It will take many years. It will take many years. Trump won't acknowledge that. Like, we talked about this before. Trump won't acknowledge that because, like, obviously it doesn't suit him politically. But, like, what's interesting about it, though, is that, like, he is, like, setting something up that won't kind of, like, I guess, have any benefit during his term. Trump is so right. Slap tariffs and they'll have to move their jobs. 100% correct. Yes, thank you. We've got our foreign correspondent back. Oh, yeah. There he is, David. But, like, I don't know how to say this without coming across like I'm just completely agreeing with Trump on everything. But, like, his position is anti-neoliberal. And, like, we have been complaining about the neoliberal order for a long time. And, like, it would seem that his rhetoric, at least. Remember, we started watching this because we want to be able to compare, come back here in, like, I don't know, 6 months, 2 years time or whatever and say, haha, he said he was going to do all these things and he didn't. Or it'd be like, oh my God, he delivered on this. So, like, you know, it really does seem that, like, this guy's right, whatever our mate here, the representative of the global corporate elite is saying, like, it's going to have upfront costs, yeah, but, like, it will have longer term effects, like bringing back industry. And, like, once they invest that capital and the tariffs kind of go, then they have to decide to deindustrialize, which takes a long time too. And, like, in a bipolar world, so, like, when American hegemony is not the be all and end all anymore, like, you know, it's going to be important for countries to have their own localized production and manufacturing. Again, just from a purely kind of Marxist kind of like analysis of how capitalism kind of works from that standpoint.
In fact, I'll tell you, you know, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. When I do the 10%, 10% is really, first of all, 10% when you collect it is hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers that you're talking, all reducing our deficit. But really, so there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Now, if you want the companies to come in, the tariff has to be a lot higher.
Yeah, it does. I know. I think I know what you're talking about, 4AS. I don't like it either, because usually people use it to, like, attack commies and stuff like that and say that they're just like Nazis or something like that. But let's see if we're thinking about the same thing. Horseshoe theory. Horseshoe crab. No, damn. Yeah, political horseshoe theory. Can you guys see that properly? So, like, yeah, communism and, you know, far-right ideologies kind of swing back around and meet each other very closely at the end. You're talking about that because, like, what Trump's, like, I keep on saying, like, Trump's rhetoric is, like, anti-neoliberal, right? Yeah, I get it. Like, it kind of does, but, like, we're just looking at economic rhetoric here. Like, this political spectrum covers way more than just how you deal with, like, you know, global trade. Like, there's some pretty crazy kind of, like, you know, nationalism, like crazy stuff here. Like, because communism is definitely, you know, international. It's not nationalism at all. There's other things here that are definitely kind of not covered, or, like, you know, are on this spectrum that I wouldn't say the left and the right touch or lock with in step. Let's go back to our mate here. Oh my God, old mate Trump. Oh my God.
Because 10% is not enough. Guys, they're not going to do it for 10. But you make a 50% tariff, they're going to come in. Let me tell you the other thing about tariffs that's great. Our steel companies, as you know, 3-4 years ago, they were all when I was in office, I saw a man from a big steel company, and he was devastated. I knew him for a long time, and it's been a tough bit.
What's really interesting about Trump as well, he's so anecdotal. Like, a lot of people just talk about, like, you know, empirical stuff. Like, they just, like, rattle on stats and, like, you know, but, like, he just keeps talking about, like, I saw this guy the other day, you know, like, kind of thing. I talked to this woman, you know, lovely woman. God, I love her, like, kind of thing. And, like, it seems rather strange in this kind of, you know, rational world that this business community sits in. But, like, if he's talking to real people and stuff like that, it's just such a weird level of politics that you don't see, like, very often these days. And, like, another reason, like we were talking about, you know, hours ago now, like how, like, he is very, very different to the political establishment style. And, like, if you were going to try and beat Trump in election, and he's proved it twice now, if you're going to beat him in election, you have to offer something that is, like, very different to what he can offer, or you have to have someone who's strong enough to take him on where he stands. And, like, I just don't think Kamala offered that at all.
Business. It was a great business many years ago. And I would not let U.S. Steel be sold to Japanese, by the way. It's psychologically, I think it would be
That's the
terrible
Nippon
thing.
Steel, as you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it be sold. But I would stop it if it hasn't been completed by the time I'm president, because I think it sets a horrible tone. But I had a lot to do with steel. We were going to lose all our steel companies because China, as you remember, was dumping steel at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And I put a 50% tax on that and a tariff on that, all dumped steel. And it was also bad steel. It was what they call dirty steel. It wasn't good steel, which is a bad thing for structural components of buildings and planes and things like that. They were dumping crap into our country. And I put a 50% tariff. I started at 25. I raised it to 50 because the 25 didn't quite do it. I raised it to 50, and that did it. They stopped dumping steel.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, 25% tariff on, like, a Chinese good doesn't stop them from coming. The Chinese machine is just so different. We're going to have to do a live stream going into, like, how China works and stuff like that. But, like, because they're state capitalist, okay? Like, look, I'm sure we could all argue for hours on what to classify them. But, like, for the sake of this argument, let's just, like, label China as state capitalist. Because they are able to direct their economy, because of, you know, the Communist Party and stuff like that, and the fact that they have, like, state-owned enterprises and all that. Like, they can just be like, we are producing so much value, like, in terms of, like, goods through industrial production, and they take it over and, you know, they take it over to other countries and overwhelm other countries by their levels of production that's being, you know, pushed by the fact that you have one kind of party making sure certain economic measures are met. They can absorb, like, a 25% tariff just like that. Like, other countries, like, if it was just left up to the private industry and the business sector, their profits would take such a hit from that, then they would just die under the weight of, like, a 25% tariff, and they'd have to rethink their whole business strategy. Like, the people would go under, like, you know, it'd be the death of them. And then, like, the Chinese are just like, 25%, what you got, Trump, like, kind of thing. And, like, he's saying here that it's just like it took them, like, up to 50%, like, to kind of, like, stave off the Chinese, like, kind of thing. But, like, isn't that amazing, like, how their system works, the Chinese? Like, they have figured out how to operate under a capitalist mode of production better than the capitalists themselves, like, in terms of being able to insulate themselves from certain things. Like, you can argue about what that's going to do in terms of their longevity, but, like, as a bunch of Marxists, or, like, I'm sure they would have Marxists in their economics systems and, like, their schools and all that sort of stuff, they do have an interesting interpretation of capitalism, and they know how to feed the contradictions of capitalism to suit themselves. And I think he's kind of, like, trying to challenge that. That's what he's trying to do.
And I saved our steel mills by having that. We saved it. We saved our steel. Now, what was left, because we've lost so much, but there are certain companies you have to have. There are certain things you have to have. Steel, you have to have. If you go to war, you know, there's a possibility you go to war. I kept us out of war. I was the only president in 82 years
Here
that
it
kept
comes.
you out of a war, except I defeated ISIS, but I inherited that war. There's no wars.
We want to build.
He loves that. He loves that fact, doesn't he? Eh? I didn't even know it's true. I've heard people say that he was still like drone bombing people and stuff like that. So like, you know, maybe he didn't start any new wars, but he was definitely killing them, killing enemies.
By the way, and I think it's very
You know,
important.
someone can fact check that one for me in the chat if they want, or fact check me on that.
You can go, you know, I call it the weave. You can call it, you have the weave as long as you end up in the right location at the end. But while we're talking about it, we have never been so close to World War III as we are right now. With what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and the Middle East.
Well, let's.
I had no wars in the whole world. Think of it. And I talked them out of wars. I talked plenty of countries out of wars. I had the
His
whole
gesticulations
world,
are
other than
hilarious.
ISIS, which I inherited, and I knocked out ISIS in a matter of weeks. It was supposed to take 4 to 5 years. I did it in a matter of weeks.
These business people don't want to hear about that. They want to get back onto finance and trade and etc.
We actually have a great military. We don't know how to use it,
You've
but we have a great
President Trump, with
military.
great respect, I was asking about tariffs. You've gone off about that. Seeing you brought up tariffs and foreign policy, many people would say the biggest problem with your tariffs is actually geopolitics. You, in your first term, you got some credit for effectively saying that there was a Cold War against China. That's what America was in. If you look at the last Cold War against the Soviet Union, America won it in part because it rallied allies to it. You're talking about slamming allies with 30%, 20% tariffs. Isn't this time you're going to end up trying to rally?
So from the chat, someone has disputed the fact whether Trump really didn't start any new wars or anything like that. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, you know, it's an overarching comment. I'm sure he's exaggerating a little bit there, or maybe omitting key facts. It's unusual for Trump, isn't it?
The West, and you're dividing it instead. Isn't that the real problem with tariffs, even beyond all the problems due to the economy, where you keep on bringing up these individual examples, but the overall effect is going to be dramatic?
No, the
But
overall
answer
effect will
answer first about foreign policy.
Yeah, I'll do that.
How does it help you take on
It
China,
helps
turning all your allies against you?
tremendously, because China thinks we're a stupid country, a very stupid country. They can't believe that somebody finally got wise to them. Not one president, Bush, Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, have you heard of him? Not one president, think of it, not one president charged China anything. They said, oh, they are a third world nation, they're developing. Well, we're a developing nation too. Take a look at Detroit. Take a look at our cities. We're a developing nation. We have to develop more than they do. We're way behind them. You take a look at what's happened to our cities. So what I'm saying is
my
this.
question was about your allies, not about China. You are going to annoy the people
Our allies,
you need to rally behind you.
But our allies have taken advantage of us more so than our enemies. Our allies are the European Union. We have a trade deficit of $300 billion with the European Union. Our allies are Japan. You know, Abe was a very good friend of mine. He was a great guy, great. And I said to him in Japan.
Well, I know that when Trump was president, inflation was non-existent, houses were much more affordable, and plenty of good jobs, not crap gig economy jobs. I'll give him that. We're a developing nation too. Look at Detroit. Look, he turned that around really well. He kind of did, didn't he? But like, yeah, look, it's a good point. Like, I've heard a lot of people talk about this as well. Like, you know, like cost of living was down, but like generally across the world, cost of living was kind of not where it is now, like when Trump was president last compared to now. Like there's been an inflation crunch across the world, but like, you know, and he will take credit for that, and like his supporters and stuff will say like, look, inflation happened under Biden. Under Trump it was all like easy, smooth sailing. I could afford a house, I could afford to feed my family, like no, like jobs were more secure, etc. I think there's just a general progression, to be honest. Like, this is late stage capitalism. I wish I had a better word for this. Like, late stage capitalism is just such a broad term. Like, let's call it post-COVID capitalism there, or post-2008 capitalism. Like, there has been a large destruction of stable work generally, and with the rise of tech giants and things like that, and the way that things... Oh, what did I miss? Who won? Look, Squeeb89. I like, depending on where you sit politically, let me just break it to you like this: Trump won, and like from what we've been discussing here, it wasn't really predicted, depending on, I guess, who you speak to, or who you align with. But yes, Trump won, and it was like, it seems to have taken a number of people by surprise. But like, yeah, I would say though, after like 2008, thanks to the increased financialization of the world at large, especially advanced and Western countries, and like especially thanks to like kind of the hollowing out of the industrial sector, like the like kind of the lag time response of that is like the fact that we have like a massive gig economy now, and like tech companies are coming in and distributing work. Like most people get their work off like an app now. Like they're given shifts off an app. They are like kind of their boss, their manager now, their team leader is an app on their phone, and it tells them, you know, what type of shift they're going to be taking up next. You know, so the gig economy is going to be an increasingly huge part of the industrialized world now, and I think that is going to increase more with the rise of big tech companies, and specifically AI. Like we'll soon all be working for an AI system somehow. That's just my kind of 2 cents on it, and we spoke about this before. Was one of the two won or stolen? Well, like it's funny that you say that, because when Trump wins, like, you know, like everyone's kind of like, you know, this is just how elections works. But if he loses, like it's all like, someone stole the election. Tesla share price goes up after a Trump win. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. The Thucydides trap. Oh, I wonder what that is. I'm going to have to look that up. But yeah, look, you're right, David. Like things were simpler last time. But like I think things have also become very much more complicated after like COVID. It gave the world economy a real shock. And like, you know, one thing about housing prices in America, which I don't know if Americans talk about this enough, but like I've heard it, and like from all the way over here on the other side of the world. But like, you know, that like that company, that evil corporation, BlackRock, that like after the 2008 subprime mortgage disaster, like they started up just buying up everyone's houses in America. Like all the people that defaulted on their home loans and stuff like that, they just started buying up houses. And like a large percentage of homes in America are now basically owned by some corporation. And like before, you kind of you had companies involved in the housing market. Don't get me wrong, but like not on this scale. And like things like that, like the centralization of capital in fewer and fewer hands, and like how they can kind of gut out a market that was like basically decentralized. Like people, you know, owned something. They had an asset, and like something they could rely on and use to build wealth. That is a huge thing. That is a massive thing in like, it's massive for the working class, for like the fabled middle class to have that. And like, if that is like disappearing now, like that's just kind of like an aspirational thing, like having asset ownership and stuff like that, then you're going to have a rise in the gig economy. And like, you're going to have impacts where people feel like they just don't have the ability to partake in the system anymore. So like, yeah, it's a scary reality, but like this is where the world is at the moment. This is definitely where the world's going. And like, again, I don't have a better descriptor for this. I want to say late stage capitalism again, but like, let's just say, yeah, post COVID, or at least post 2008 capitalism. This is the general trend, and I don't see this disappearing. Like even under Trump, like he'll do a lot of things. Like the stuff he's talking about is going to add to inflation in the short term. So like, you know, I don't see this stuff disappearing. I don't see this stuff disappearing for a while, to be honest. So, like, strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen. Strap yourselves in. I'm going to look up this
And he was
Thucydides thing
assassinated.
in the
And
meantime.
he was a great man. He really was. I didn't see too many like him. And he got very sick, and he had to take off. And then he was actually making a comeback. He was going to make a comeback, and he would have won easily. But he was a great gentleman, handsome, wonderful man, respected by everybody. And I went to him, and I said, Shinzo, we have to talk. What? Trade.
Oh,
and he goes, I'll never forget.
That's pretty good.
I know. I said, what do you know? I knew you'd come to me. Why do you say that? Because I can't believe. I wouldn't tell this story.
I can't believe. Like, some of the stuff he says is just amazing. All right, let's check out the Thucydides' trap. All right, this is a great concept. Thank you for sharing. So, it's a term popularized by an American political scientist to describe an apparent tendency towards war when an emerging power threatens to displace an existing great power as a regional or international hegemon. That's a sick way of describing kind of the general sentiment out there. Now, I would posit to you that I don't actually see any war coming, like, on the American scene, let's call it, or like the American-China war. I don't really see that as an element or a factor that we all have to worry about at the moment. I see this as media beat up, like massive media beat up. Like, strategically, if you want your populations to do something and to think a certain way or vote a certain way, you stir up the hype of war. And so then you can coerce your populations into doing basically whatever you want. So, like, saber rattling, yeah, I guess you can. Like, there's a lot of posturing going on. But what I'm talking about is, like, the mainstream media, though. Like, this is a form of propaganda. Like, talking about the war constantly the possible war between China and America and stuff like that, World War III. Like, the problem is, like, unless the Americans are talking, like, we're talking about the Americans invading China, or like attacking them, like them being the aggressor, the Americans, I don't see it happening. Because, like, the Chinese, from what I understand, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand about geopolitics, is the Chinese don't have the navy, in terms of a long-range navy, to even be able to effectively attack Taiwan, as opposed to, starting World War III or something like that. So, like, unless, yes, like I said, the Americans kick something off or something like that, World War III, in terms of how we understood World War II, I don't really see that as coming, like, to being like an actual reality. But they will use the fear of it, the media, to help control public opinion and get things done in certain ways, like moving to more authoritarian means. Like, we've talked about this a few hours ago now, but, like, like, Trump has the power to be, like, to turn himself into one of those, dictators for life kind of thing. Like, that's not that's more likely, I would say, or a higher likelihood than we've ever had before in American history, I would say, because of, like, the general sentiment that's going on in the world right now. But, like, what we will have, and what we do have already, is we have a Cold War going on, and the Cold War is more around, I would say, like, how we are using kind of remote technologies in warfare and artificial intelligence in warfare. The Cold War at the moment is there is an intelligence race going on in terms of artificial intelligence, and, like, whoever comes off supreme there, like, you're not even going to need to have a world war soon. Like, whoever wins out, like, in terms of, like, the AI arms race that's happening, like, they'll be able to use, like, cybersecurity threats and stuff like that to take down whole nations and dismantle whole nations, like, from afar, without even really having to send in the troops, not up front anyway. So, like, yeah, very interesting about, like, this idea of, like, one power coming up and rising against each other, and they use kind of war and, like, a tendency towards warfare. So, like, they're posturing, don't get me wrong, and there's a tendency in that sense. So I like this theory in that regard, because it doesn't say it has to be warfare, but there's a tendency towards it, and you can hear that rhetoric. It's on non-stop. Like people are going on about war a lot. See, similar for US, need to focus on quality over just bulk and mass produced. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Where countries are at odds, China, US, like to hate each other, but they are also good for each other in the status quo. So both are just ambiguous in the next step. So they can have future claim. Yeah, look, it's a good point. I think they're good for each other too. Squeeb, 89. I'm with you on that one. I talked about this kind of at length before, or at least touched on it. Anyway, like when the USSR was a military competitor for the US during the previous Cold War, let's call it now, they weren't really an economic competitor, let's be honest. But like when there was the specter of communism, again, that was like, you know, overshadowing the world, let's say, the Americans had to prove that capitalism was the way to go. And so like having the USSR there kept the Americans, to a certain degree, on the surface anyway, honest. They had to kind of treat their own population with respect, and they had to be more respectful of their allies. Once they've got, like, at the moment, they've got like complete hegemony, they can like do what Trump is doing. They can be whoever they want to anyone. They can, act any way they want to anyone. So like a little bit more competition on the global stage, I think, is a good thing overall. Both need to say that they will run the hard line to get their voters backing them, but will act to not displace the current status of the relationship. SWIFT won't be replaced. What? You reckon SWIFT won't? Well, SWIFT won't be replaced among the G7. Like they'll still need to use the G7. They will still need to use the SWIFT for anyone who wants to trade in US dollars and stuff like that. But like SWIFT won't be as necessary in a world where you have the BRICS. Good for alternatives to come to market, but won't have the same buying power. Can't see it's being cheaper either. Fair enough. But like, yeah, SWIFT won't be replaced, but like it's not going to be the only channel but SWIFT will have competition. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. And this is what I'm saying, like just this general competition, like what you said, Squib. General competition. It's going to keep, for lack of a better word, on the surface anyway, it's going to keep the Americans more honest, or the G7 honest anyway. All right, so that's enough. I'm finished with listening to Trump talk about tariffs and beat his chest about how wonderful he was in terms of like how he didn't start new wars and all that sort of stuff. Assume competition will be at a premium though. Ooh. So like you're saying, it'll only be good for certain areas, or like sectors of the economy, or sectors of political and social life. Yes. What about Trump and crypto? Adventure time instead. Yeah, Bitcoin, or Trump and crypto. But like, what about Trump and crypto though? Like, I haven't heard. Like, is Trump endorsing crypto, or are you just talking about those two factors working concurrently? Premium, like buying green things. You buy it for the message. Yeah, this is an idea called cultural capitalism. Squeeb, 89. You may have heard of it, or may not. I'm not sure. But like, cultural capitalism is like the idea that you're buying into like the image of the thing as opposed to the actual value inherent in the product itself. You could cover Sublation Media. They did a left versus right redefined stream. Yeah, this is the paradigm shift, right? This is the realignment. JFK, RFK talked about it. He thinks that this is a once in a generation or once in a lifetime realignment of the political spectrum in America. I will have to do that, but like unfortunately, I'm gonna have to finish up now. It's funny because I'm just like we've got a few people on the line. The chat's starting to pick up again. But like I'm going to have to leave it there. So thank you very much for joining for this U.S. election post-mortem. We've covered a lot of stuff here over the last, like, how long have we been going for now? Oh my God. I think we've been going since about 10:30 this morning. So, sorry, that's AEST for all the non-Australians out there. So we've been going for a while, a number of hours. So yes, I'm gonna have to finish it up there. But thank you very much. Coffee break. My God, do I need a coffee break? I just need to stop talking. My mouth is dry, and I'm like, I've given it my all. But I will continue to do these live streams. I think like this is what I'm gonna like start to do now with my content. Like I used to make a lot of like static long form content, but like I'm gonna start to do a bit more live stream stuff now. So I hope you like this format style. Please give me a like, comment, subscribe for more. You know the drill. I'm also on Sultry Tones with MysterE. Like it's a filibuster. It's such a good word. Yeah, I'm on Patreon now, so please go over to Patreon. There's a link in the description, and like just join and become a member for free. So like I said, I'm trying to build a community over there so we can have a better communication channel, and we can, you know, start this movement. If you can support financially, my God, it will help. I'll be able to get YouTube Premium, as Jerry Poppins was saying, so like ads stop coming up in my live stream. But at the moment, being a content creator with this level of interaction is quite difficult, and I just don't have the capital behind this enterprise in order to pay for YouTube Premium at this stage. So thank you very much for watching. Until next time, please remember, I am, you are, we are a MysterE. See you later.